Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 293 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. And yes, finally got my one-shot fix, and we actually did the open to the show correctly this week, Matt. How's it going, man?
Well done.
Well done. It was funny, the last episode. It cuts to you, and you're just kind of chilling there. Anyway, we're back. I want to apologize off the top that we missed last week. I was sick as a flippin' dog. First of all, I hadn't been sick in like 6 years or something. Never got COVID or anything. Made it through all that stuff. And I got like a stomach virus or something. I don't even know what it was. But I literally couldn't like take a sip of water without getting sick and puking. It was... I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I'll just put it to you that way.
I would.
Yeah. And I was sick for like 4 days. And then my wife got it. She fought it off in like 2 or 3 days, though. I had it way worse than her. But anyway, we're back. So I do apologize for missing the show last week. But we're back with a fervor this week. We have a great show for you guys. Tons of big games to talk about. I don't think we really missed any last week either.
Not really.
Yeah.
Might have gotten to talk about the janky Euro RPG I've been playing.
Oh, right. That's true, because we would have needed it. But
yeah, because there's nothing else to
week.
do. Let Shane know if you want me to talk about Elix 2, because I put up more hours than anyone should into that game for some reason.
Yeah, Matt told me, I was like, what did you play this week? And he told me one game, then he said Elix 2, and I was like, I don't really know much about Elix 2. So I went and started looking it up, like watched a couple YouTube videos, and I was like, no, I don't think so.
It's a masterclass in Eurojank. It's exactly what we're talking about when we talk about that. It is a B game. It's a B-list game in a way they just don't make anymore, except it's the guys who made Gothic and Risen, and it's the only thing they've made for like the last 20 years. So it's an amazing, weird, like it's frozen in amber, and I think it's an entertaining rundown. Yeah. I wouldn't tell you to play it by any stretch of the imagination. I wouldn't tell anyone to play it.
I think you just shared pretty much all you need to share about Elix 2.
Oh, there's so much more.
The B-roll sounds like it might have been entertaining, to say the least.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's probably a really interesting no-clip documentary in that Piranha Bytes dev team. Like what are you doing, and why have you never hired a combat designer? Would be my main question.
Yeah.
Because the combat in that game is just as bad as it's been since like Gothic 2.
Wow.
And I know there's people that say Gothic 2 has good combat, and they are wrong.
So anyway, we're back after a week off. Also, I was not able to do Good Morning Gaming for the entire week because I felt like death. But that returned this week, and we've had 2 episodes already this week, and here we are with GameFace, with a great episode of GameFace for you guys, by the way. Also, I keep doing the Shane versus Elden Ring live streams every Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Matt, I've actually made like pretty good headway.
Yeah?
I beat Godric, like, I think if I counted him, like I fought him 6 times before I beat him, something like that. Way better than I thought.
What kind of character are you playing?
The same. Like, I've just morphed my character and like added more strength and other attributes and things like that. But honestly, the reason I'm doing it is because you guys are helping me get through the game. So with each new episode, we archive it and we put it up for our patrons, and then people give me tips. And then every Saturday morning, I wake up, I do a little bit of curation, and then I do my homework, which is like a list of things that people have told me, okay, now that you've done this, you should probably go do this, this, and this. I try to get that stuff done before the stream starts at 2 p.m. Pacific. And then we go on a little odyssey together for like an hour and a half. We see what I can accomplish in that amount of time. It's been fun, and you guys have been awesome helping me get through the game. So keep that in mind every Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. It's only about an hour and a half, and it's a lot of fun. A lot of people are very helpful, and I appreciate it a bunch. Before we get going, there was a disturbance in the force yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Jones has announced that he is retiring. Most of you guys probably know. I think most of the people on the stream know that I come from Game Trailers, and I worked with Brandon for 7 or 8 years. I was surprised to see this, but not that surprised. I think most people probably were really surprised. For me, I wasn't that surprised because I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm a little older. I'm doing this. It's a grind. Mm-hmm. There's no time off. To do this, and I mean do this like on Patreon or as a YouTube channel or an influencer, not work at like a major publication or whatever. It's different to do what Brandon and I are doing. It's just nonstop. You have to give over your life to this. There's no in the middle. I have done that. I have given up all my free time for our Patreon, and it doesn't really seem to make a difference for us. It just doesn't. I don't know what I have to do at this point to make our Patreon go up. It feels like every Patreon launches at its highest amount, and then it's just a slow decline down. Like, it just doesn't seem like there's any up or down with Patreons. I don't know if Kind of Funny has managed to break that curse, but it seems like every Patreon, you launch, you have a amount of money you can probably work with, and then just over time, like, I had no idea that Easy Allies Patreon had fallen as much as it had. I should have guessed, because ours has got destroyed through COVID.
Sometimes you can't tell because they hide the total.
Well, that's what's happened with a lot of the gaming Patreons lately, is when their total gets to a certain number, they just start hiding it so you can't see it.
Well, then also, sometimes if it gets high enough, they hide it.
Right, because they don't want people to not contribute, because they're like, oh, you have enough. Yeah, you already have enough money. It's this weird thing. Do you think the Patreon experiment, though, has ultimately failed, Matt?
I mean, not for the people it worked for.
I mean, Kind of Funny, obviously, it's been great. Yeah,
there's always going to be, I think if you're like a smaller operation that's not putting a tremendous amount of time into, the production value, it more or less works. I think, a lot of the film essay YouTubers I follow or even contribute to on Patreon, like, they seem to do okay, and they're usually like a host and like a writer and a producer, like doing like one video a month, and that seems to work for them. Like, it keeps their production company, a small production company, in business. But in terms of, like, I think it's just a matter of balance. It's like, that's a decent living if you're making one video a month or two videos a month, maybe doing a live stream every once in a while, like, to interact with people. If you're doing like daily gaming content, like, that's a whole lot more grind for a whole lot less money.
Well, right now I'm doing a daily podcast, Good Morning Gaming, every day. That's 20 to 30 minutes long. I do a 3-hour episode of GameFace every week. I do 2 to 3 episodes of Pachter Factor every week. All the special one-off stuff that we do, Ask Shane Anything, Dossier, I handle all that stuff. That's all me. I'm doing that all by myself. In addition to doing some curation on the weekends, so Vincent doesn't have to do it 7 days a week. It's a grind, man. It literally will kill you.
Might be time to start the OnlyFans.
Yeah, I'm just going to have to get nude for the money. I don't know what else I can do, but it does feel like the great Patreon experiment has kind of ultimately failed. It lasted for 5 years, it seemed like, 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it's sort of, it plateaued, basically. Like, if you got in good and you succeeded, you're pretty good.
Yeah.
If you didn't,
I thought Easy Allies was that.
Yeah.
And, like, I was shocked to see where their total is. It's less than half of what it started at. Mm-hmm. And we actually haven't been beat up that bad. We haven't fallen to less than half. I don't know if that's common.
I don't know if that's like a common drop. But again, so many people that are equivalents hide the total that it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's true. So anyway, Brandon, I just want to say, like, I don't want to eulogize the guy because he's very young still. He's very fortunate to be in a position where he can.
Yeah. And he's still going to do VO work, and he's still going to do, he's still going to do other stuff. He's just not going to do daily video game
journalism. Well, he said he's retiring from games journalism, whatever that entails. But I love Brandon. He is an amazing guy. He is one of the best people I have ever worked with in this industry. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not conflating anything. He is just an amazing person. I talked about it a little bit on this morning's episode of Good Morning Gaming. And when I first started working at Game Trailers, he was the first guy who came to me and was like, hey, I'm Brandon. Like, let's be friends. Before that, it was like, welcome aboard. Hope everything goes great with you here. And he was the first person to come to me and, like, be a person and say, hey, I'm Brandon. This is, I helped launch this thing. This is, my baby. We're very happy to have you here. Like, where are you from? He wanted to get to know me. He was the first person at GT that did that. So I will always love Brandon Jones. He's also come on GameFace several times. I don't know why he's never had me on their shows. That's always been a weird thing for some reason. He's
definitely has time to come back.
He does. He does now for sure. And then there were, his son has had some medical issues over the last couple of months, although he did say that he had actually made the decision last year to leave, and he's just now doing it. So I don't know how much the issues with his son has played into it. But
some of it is probably like COVID putting things into a different perspective for people. I mean, Blair Herter's doing a similar thing. He announced this week that he's leaving G4, and moving to Amsterdam with his family to work for Team Liquid.
Yeah.
Which I know is something I remember talking to him about that years and years ago. So I think it was a thing where it's just like, oh, that made a lot of people realize, like, oh, we want to do some of these things. We got to do them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I respect that.
I do too. I don't know what the hell's going on in G4.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does that.
Ooh. Holy moly.
They killed their esports discussion show because they couldn't show any esports footage.
Which makes no sense whatsoever.
Because the esports companies own the footage, so they wouldn't license it. They wouldn't allow them to use it.
That's like ESPN not being allowed to use NFL highlights.
Yeah, well.
That's so short-sighted on the part of the game publishers. Mm-hmm. But they do have a chokehold.
Oh, it's not the game publishers, it's the esports leagues.
The leagues?
I think it's the leagues wouldn't let them use the footage of the actual events.
Then that's really stupid. Mm-hmm. Really, really stupid.
Everyone running all of that stuff is stupid.
Yeah.
Like, no one knows how to make money on esports, so everybody's paranoid about everything. Like, oh, if we let this go, that might be where the money is. It's not. I promise it's not.
It's not. You're not going to make tons of money off of licensing.
Yeah, the only thing you could possibly get from that is more exposure.
Yeah. Yeah, by letting them use it. There's a reason why the NFL
lets that happen. Yeah.
If you're not smart enough to look at what the NFL does and say, you know what, they're probably right.
Yeah, if the NFL does it, I promise it's safe.
Yes, and it's the best practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are about as conservative as you can get when it comes to like deciding what to do with their IPs.
Yeah, and they guard it. Yeah. Like at every turn that they can where it makes even the slightest bit of sense to do so. Then the NFL does it. And here are these esports leagues just...
Also maybe worth saying to some of these game publishers that pull trailers down or do strikes against their own promotional footage. Yeah. Which is still the weirdest thing.
There are fewer of those. Like, it's still really like Rockstar, some Bandai Namco stuff. And that's pretty much it at this point. Most of even Nintendo has figured it out at this point. They're like, you know what, just let people
Nintendo's figured it out. You're behind the curve.
That's the NFL example, isn't it? If Nintendo's good with it, then everybody should be good with it. So anyway, I just want to say I have a lot of love for Brandon Jones. He did some amazing stuff. He launched game trailers, created a business that I was able to work at for 7 years of my career. That's amazing. Not just me, obviously dozens and dozens of other people. Then he goes on and creates Easy Allies, a new outlet for people to work. I really appreciate people who create jobs for other people. Like, it's not easy to create a business where you can have other people work for your business and pay them and give them some kind of a living from it. It's a really good feeling for me personally, and I'm sure Brandon feels the same way, and he has now done it twice. But honestly, like, if someone had to ask me, and I have not talked to Brandon about this at all, so I don't have any insider information, but I would say he probably just burned the F out. It is brutal. I know people are like, you guys have a dream job. It would be a dream job if you did it 40 hours a week. It would be the dream job. It
doesn't stop.
It never
there's no end to
stops, ever. I never have a day off, ever. And it's nice. The crazy part is I still love doing it. And I think some people, you really get tested. Like, how much do you really love games? Like, how much do you really love games? Can you do it 70, 80 hours a week and still come back for more? Not everyone can. I have been doing it now for 7 years, and here I am. I'm still standing. So,
yeah, once a week is enough for me.
Yeah, for most people it is. And this is my life. And you can see our Patreon. I'm not getting paid, people. I am not cha-chinging my way with Sifted. It's for the love. I have a passion that just doesn't die. But even I get to a breaking point sometimes, like where I'm like, what the F am I doing? My wife hates Good Morning Gaming. Hates it. Because I record it every night. I have to wait for the news to happen so I can record it. So that happens at like 6:30 or 7 o'clock. I record the podcast. Takes me 30, 45 minutes to record it. Then I have to edit it all together. Then I have to render it. Then I have to upload it. Then I have to promote it. And that takes me from around 6:30 until 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night, every night, after working all day. So she's like, where's my time? I've literally see her now like 45 minutes a day after I get done with that and before she goes to bed because she has to get up earlier than me. So it's a sacrifice. It's a big-time sacrifice, and I can totally understand why Jones would be like, you know what? I'm out. I totally would get it. I do wish everyone who's staying at Easy Allies the best of luck. I love those guys, too. I worked with those guys at Game Trailers for quite a while, at least most of them. Damiani and Bloodworth obviously worked with me for a really long time. Some of the other guys were interns or whatever whenever I left, or PAs. So I don't know them quite as well, but I do know they're good dudes, and they do good work. So I hope that Easy Allies can stick it out, and I hope that their Patreon doesn't get hammered after Jones leaves, because it's possible. So, anyway, with all that said, I want to thank everybody who's in the chat right now. You guys are totally talking it up about this, and I knew it would be a big topic for you guys. Because there's a lot of crossover between our folks and the Easy Allies folks, because we come from the same family. So, yeah, lots of discussion in here. Well, before we get going, though, I want to thank people for Twitch Prime. AJ the Legend Watson, what's up, man? Good talking to you during the live Ask Shane Anything recording this weekend. That archive's going up soon. We already hit the hype train. That's awesome. AJ also giving out tier 1 subs. Ian Esquire, giving us bits for Good Morning Gaming. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. In fact, let me pop the chat up on the screen here so you guys can see it. Also, thank you for Twitch Prime, Ian Esquire. Gerzilla, thank you for Twitch Prime. Kevin Rafa, would you say that you enjoy Elden Ring? Not really. Like, I play it. I don't hate it. Like, I like it more than all their other games. So that's a step in the right direction. Mm-hmm. But would I rather be playing Elden Ring on Saturday for 2 hours, or would I rather be trying to finish Horizon Forbidden West? I'd rather be playing Horizon, just being honest. But I have made it way farther in this game than I have in any other From Software game. So that says something.
Yeah. I do like it.
Yeah.
I just hit 100 hours of my second character.
Wow.
And level 179, I think.
Wow. I'm level 120.
I am a very powerful sorcerer. I got my intelligence is 80.
Yeah.
And just I can two-shot most stuff.
Like bosses.
Not so much, but a good rock sling, they're not lasting too long. I kill most stuff in about 5-6 shots.
Wow.
While they're being distracted by my summon.
Oh, we got a lot of good stuff in here, actually. Karma Lounge, thank you for Twitch Prime. Corey Film, thank you for the bits, man. I appreciate that. Johnny Hurricane, thank you for Twitch Prime. Nox Adernitis, thank you for Twitch Prime. You know, everyone who watches this on YouTube, you guys can do this too. You're getting the show for free. It would be nice if you could spend the 3 seconds once a month to hook us up. We're giving you 3 hours a week for free, and it takes you 2 seconds. While you're listening to the show, just go and resubscribe. It takes 2 seconds. We need it, folks. We need the help. Who else we got in here that hooked us up? El Guapo 3385, thank you for Twitch Prime. Andy T. Monahan, thank you for subscribing at Tier 1. Talika 1981, thank you for Twitch Prime. Not Cirque, thank you. Cinetike, thank you for the bits, for recovering from my illness. Lesteved, thank you for gifting out Tier 1 subs. Swanland, thank you for Twitch Prime. So much good stuff in here. Thank you, guys. It's a good way to come back from a week off from the show. See if we got anything else here before we get going. And I think that's it.
In answer to Fire Native, I did do a melee build until level 60-ish on PC, the PC review copy. And then I started an Xbox Magic character just to see how the Xbox version ran mostly. But I got sucked into the Sorcerer character and have played that more now than I played the melee character.
Okay.
Not that I didn't enjoy the melee character, but I just always I like Magic builds in the From games. So
okay, that's what I've kind of stuck with. And
this is the best Magic system in any From game. This is by far the best they've ever done.
The people who have watched the stream have kind of guided me along the way of pulling back a little bit from being a mage and increasing my physical abilities more.
I would say the trade-off is that I think Magic stuff works better in this game if you already have a lot of experience with the series.
Yeah.
Because you know the ins and outs and you know how you need to behave.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas it's easier, I think, to get into the melee combat because the melee combat is going to forcibly teach you how these enemies work.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely found the melee combat a better way to learn the new systems of the game.
Yeah.
I had to unlearn some stuff that I was expecting to you have to approach things a little differently in this game, which I like. They did change it up more than I thought they did.
Yeah.
I will probably keep building this character, and in New Game Plus, I will probably build the strength side of him. I'm already building the strength of him up, so I will probably get to a point like I do in the other Dark Souls games where he is kind of a hybrid.
Okay.
Where he can do anything.
I do feel like the game still feels like a lot of work. For instance, we were going through my inventory on the stream, and I had all these gold runes. I had no idea what to do with them.
See, that goes back to Demon's Soul. So that's what I mean by already knowing.
Yeah, building on the knowledge or whatever. And they had just been sitting in my inventory for hours and hours and hours. And they're like, Dude, use those.
Yeah.
I had...
They'll get you over the level up.
Oh, I leveled up like 4 times with them. Like, and I could have been 4 levels higher this whole time, and I had no idea.
The two tricks I use in that regard is, like, you know, obviously if you're close to leveling up, use your runes, your golden runes to like get yourself over that limit.
Yeah.
If you don't have enough still, like there's a couple farming spots where, like, obviously you can go here for an hour and you get 2 million runes. Which is there's
boring. Videos all over YouTube for that stuff.
But knowing where those things are is useful, because it's like, okay, I'm about to have to fight a boss. I'm at a site of grace. I am like 20,000 runes away from my next level up. I'm going to go to this place where you kill this one thing, get 13,000 runes, and do that twice and level up. So I've got like 900 runes when I fight this boss. So if I die and can't pick the runes up again, who cares? Like, that's one enemy.
Well, I went and did the cheese dragon in the last stream, where you just sit there and just whack its side for like 25.
Oh, with the bleed?
Yes.
Yeah. And you get like
80,000 runes. Yeah, and like...
and you activate the chicken foot and the...
Yeah, I do wonder, like, what percentage of people who are making it through the game are using this stuff. Because, as you said, like,
most of them.
I've watched videos where people go to these places where you just kind of stand in place and maybe shuffle side to side, and enemies are just dying around you, and your rune count is just like...
Yep. I mean, the other day, was it yesterday? The day before? I can't remember. I think it was yesterday. I decided I was going for the last few summons I didn't have, and I fought the Black Knife ringleader or something like that. But that's a hard fight even at my level, and so in the end I pinned him in a corner and just sort of like, I didn't do combos. I just sort of like hit like just long enough so my stamina didn't run out, and he wasn't able to go into a new animation.
Yeah,
and he couldn't get away because he's cornered in this by like a rock. And I just did that for like 7 minutes until he died, and now I have the best summon in the game.
The cheese dragon took me about 25 minutes.
Yeah, it's a long one.
It's funny.
And at first you're like, when I did that too, and then early on I'm like, I'm not doing any damage to it, and then all of a sudden you get that big chunk.
Yeah,
what is that? It's like, because bleed's a percentage.
It's the bleeding.
It doesn't matter how high level you are. If you're doing bleed damage, it's going to take the percentage off. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, like, again, learning those systems.
I felt guilty doing it. I was like,
I mean, that's literally what it's there for. Like, there's no way, because it doesn't do anything else.
Yeah.
The only other thing you can do with that is you can farm the dragons around it.
Yeah, and they'll keep spawning.
Respawn. Yeah,
I didn't. I just killed the dragon, and then all the babies fall at the same time.
Whereas if you kill the dragon, all the others die permanently. But you do get all their hearts, which is good for dragon.
Well, here we are talking about Elden Ring again. So, I mean, that certainly says something about the game.
Yeah, Elden Ring is going to be repeatedly coming up over the course of the whole year, I think.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have to do it again in December.
Game of the Year stuff rolls through. So... there you go. It's time to kick off the show proper. And we're going to kick off the show with what I think is probably the biggest game of the week. And that is Ghostwire Tokyo, the brand new IP from Shinji Mikami. Shinji Mikami is the creator of Resident Evil. He left Capcom. Was it after Resident Evil 4? Did he work on 5 at all?
I thought he did some preliminary stuff on 5, but left. But like, I don't think his stuff that he did, anything he did on that is in 5.
But for the most part, the last Resident Evil that he really worked on was Resident Evil 4, which most people agree is probably still the best game in the series, if not one of the best at the very least. And then he left. He started his own studio called Tango Gameworks. Is that the right long form of it?
I think so.
Tango Gameworks. And then they've been doing The Evil Within ever since. This is a brand new IP that he has said himself that he has actually pulled back from a little bit and let the people that have been working with him for all these years kind of take the lead on the game. The first thing that I would say about this game is that it makes a very, very strong first impression. My first hour or two at this game, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like GOTY material.
That's true of their other the Evil Within games too. Like Evil Within comes on strong too.
Yeah, this one especially, like the Evil Within managed to keep me hooked till the end of the game. This one, after a few hours, the interest in it definitely starts to wane. So you play as a man named Akito, and you're seeing kind of the opening cinematic here. He's in a car accident in the center of Shibuya, which is one of the most popular districts in Tokyo. All of a sudden, the spirits start coming out of the bodies of the people around you in the car accident. There's this cataclysmic event that's going on. Suddenly you realize that there's a voice in your head. You don't know what the heck is going on. It turns out that it's this dead man named KK, who is a practitioner of supernatural wizardry or magic.
Also a guitar player, masquerades as a dog at various islands.
Yes.
They called him Slider.
Yeah. So you can't really figure out what's going on, and then this mysterious masked person named Hanya appears on the screens in Shibuya. He basically announces some weird decree about taking people's souls and blah, blah, blah. As it turns out, he has Akito's sister, Mari, and Akito's mission really is to save Mari, but he realizes that he can't do it without the help of KK and KK's special powers. But KK also needs him because he needs his body to use as a conduit for his powers to stop Hana and his nefarious plans. And thus sets the whole plot into motion. Matt, the best analog I can compare this to is a game called The Darkness, which was another game where you had someone else in your head, and the game is narrated from the perspective of you talking to this invader inside your mind. And that's exactly how this game plays out. You have two...
I definitely know what you're talking about there, but I feel like the more modern comparison would probably be Venom.
Yeah.
The Venom movie.
Yeah.
Probably not as comedic.
Yeah. Well, my point is, you're right, though. The tone of this is exactly like The Darkness. It's very tongue-in-cheek. They're cracking jokes on each other. They're busting each other's cojones throughout the entire game, making fun of each other. It's not... I know it looks like a horror game, but it's really not.
I mean, it has horror elements, but
it's not.
I mean, sort of like Resident Evil 4, like that. That's not a horror game, really.
But
it's
Resident Evil 4 is scarier than this. I'll say that.
I would not describe Resident Evil 4 as scary, but
I mean, I'm telling you, it's scarier than this, for sure. Like I said, there's a lot of comedy in this. There's a lot of comedic writing. They keep it light. There's not like a lot of jump scares and things like that, like cheap tactics to scare you. Another parallel where it is a lot like The Darkness is that it's a first-person shooter-ish. You play from the first person and you're shooting stuff, but it doesn't play like your typical first-person shooter. In this game, you have magic. There's 3 different disciplines. There's wind magic, there's water magic, and there's fire magic. The wind magic is like your machine gun or your fully automatic rifle. The water magic is like a shotgun, more powerful but more localized blasts. And then the fire magic is like your rocket launcher or your grenade launcher. It's the most powerful magic, but you don't get very many charges for that. All the magic can be charged up, so if you hold the button down and then release it, it will do more damage than if you just fire it very quickly. There are skill trees in the game. There are 3 different trees. There's one for your magic. There's one for your weapons. Like you get a bow. And the bow honestly ends up ultimately breaking the game. But there's 3 trees, but I stop at calling this an action RPG, honestly, because the things that you level up, they're not like game-changing new abilities that you get. Generally, it's like, okay, now your fire spell can throw 2 fireballs instead of 1. It just kind of boosts the abilities of the stuff that you have. It doesn't really give you new abilities per se, or it will change things like how much health you get when you kill an enemy, or how much ammo you get back when you kill an enemy. So it is right on the fringe of action RPG / action adventure. So if you're someone who likes more action adventure-y stuff, but maybe you want to dabble into action RPGs, this is probably a good game to check out. So the main mission obviously is trying to rescue your sister while working with KK. But there are side missions in the game. They're completely forgettable. Like the first couple are okay. Like one takes you to like a hoarder's house, and there's a spirit inside the house, and you kind of chase it all over the house until you finally corner it, and then you get taken to this other world where you kind of enter an arena battle to finish the mission. But a lot of the missions are really just like, hey, here's this little girl ghost, and she's lost her mommy. Go find her mommy ghost. Then you find the mommy ghost, they reunite, and they leave purgatory. Because that's a big part of the game. All the spirits that have raised out of the bodies are stuck in limbo. They can't go to heaven, they can't go to hell, they're just kind of floating around. And a big part of the game is finding those spirits and then capturing them in these little paper dolls. And then you take those paper dolls to a phone booth where it sucks the souls out of the idol and into the phone booth, and then that gives you XP that you use to level up and increase your abilities and your skills.
AT&T charges a lot for that.
Apparently. Yeah, the back when luckily this was made after cell phone companies stopped charging you by the minute for your cell phone bills. Like I said, there are 3 skill trees, but they're not really that large, and they don't change the fundamentals of the combat.
I like that the early enemies here really seem like they're based on someone who had a really hard time on their commute.
Well, you say the enemies here, these are the enemies that are in the whole game. So the biggest problem with this game, as I said, it makes an amazing first impression. My first couple hours playing this game, I was like, hot damn, this game is awesome. And then it never changes. You fight the same salaryman, you fight the same schoolgirl without a head. There are probably 6 enemy types, and you fight them the entire game. There are some sub-bosses that pop up here and there, and there are a few boss fights.
They don't get like different abilities or elemental tricks. Or
and some of the stuff that is kind of cool is some of the mage...
Whoa, that is a frame rate right there.
Yeah. Some of the mage enemies are almost like bullet hell shmups, because they fire projectiles, but they're really slow. And so they come at you in this and so a lot of it is like navigating through the bullet hell to get in so that you can land your shots, because shots cancel each other out. So if an enemy shoots like a spell at you, you can cancel it out with your own spells, but that also cancels out your spell. So a lot of the combat is trying to find a clear lane to the enemy that you can get a shot in while going through sort of the bullet hell bullets that are coming towards you. So a big part of the game is rescuing the spirits from purgatory and then going to the phone booth. And
that looks real nice. Like it does make a good first impression.
Oh, yeah. Like the particle effects and everything in this are amazing. Like I said, the first couple hours, I was like, hot damn, this might be a GOTY contender. And then it just never changes. It just gets the same. Like eventually, like some of the guys will start using their umbrellas to block. So some of that evolves a little bit, the gameplay in that way. But otherwise, it's just the same thing over and over. And there is a little bit of Resident Evil 4 in this, because the enemies don't really move fast. So you can see some of them will do like the little sidestep, like it from Resident Evil 4. And it is in first person. It's not like over the shoulder like RE4. But there's some Resident Evil DNA in this, to be sure. And so if people are fans of that franchise, that might appeal to them a little bit. The world is extremely small. So it takes place in Shibuya. And the whole world is gated by fog. And when you get to one of these shrines that you're seeing right now in the B-roll, you basically purify the local area. And it doesn't purify that much. It may purify like 1 or 2 blocks. And the biggest challenge in the game, at least for me it was trying to figure out how to get around the fog and find a new shrine and get to that new shrine so that you can purify it and open up more area for exploration. Otherwise, the first couple hours of the game, you're stuck in like a 3-block area of Shibuya, and you end up going to like the same locations over and over again. Like there's a hospital that you visit like 3 different times for different quests. They really kind of keep you localized. And then after those first couple hours, it does start to crack open a little bit, but the world in this game in general is small. Like you end up learning the world. And there's lots of copy and paste. The stores replicated all over the place. All the houses replicated all over the place. The game does have a very samey look to it throughout. Towards the end, you go kind of outside of Shibuya, and it does give the game a different tone, but it's not as visually interesting, obviously, as being in the city. And I should also say the game itself is not that long either. It only took me about 12 hours to finish the game.
I mean, that's about Mikami length.
It is. Evil Within, it's basically the same length as like the Evil Within. Mm-hmm. But despite the world not being that big, everything is repetitive. Like you see the same signs over and over. You see the same houses just plop down over and over. You see the same stairways that you should be able to walk up, but you can't. Repeat it over and over again. So again, watching this B-roll, you're going to watch this and be like, this game looks flippin' awesome. It's after the first couple hours that you start to realize that there's just not much else to the game, unfortunately. The fog is infuriating. So you can go up
on. You can pet the dog.
Yes, you can, and you can feed the dog, and then the dog will dig up like health or money or whatever.
Take that, Fable.
And give you a reward. I don't know if later on, like, it never came to fruition where, like, I'm in a boss fight and, like, a bunch of dogs showed up to help me. I kept hoping that was going to be the case, but it never happened for me anyway.
Hey, it's that dog.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, even Resident Evil 4 did that.
Yeah, it did. Let's see. So I was talking about the rooftop. So there's, like, there's not really verticality in the game. There is, but it's this weird thing where there are these monsters that fly in the sky, and you can grapple to them, and they'll get you up on top of the roofs. But once you get up there, you still have to figure out a way to, like, get around the fog. And a lot of it is using that grapple to get up there, jumping around on a couple of rooftops, and then dropping down. And there's
you just straight up cannot walk in the fog at all.
No. Well, you last about 5 seconds before you die. So if you go into the fog, your health starts going down, and it happens really quickly, and you'll just die. So you can't go in there at all. Like, I would go in every once in a while, like, just to get a spirit and, like, get it real quick and then run out of the fog before I died. But other than that, yeah, it just totally wipes out your health bar almost immediately. And a big part of it is of making progress through the world is finding the flappy dudes up in the sky and then grappling to them and getting up above the fog so you can then find the next shrine to purify and open up more of the map. Well, the trick is they make it very hard to find the one spot where you can get the clear shot at the flappy guy to actually grapple up to him, and it just becomes this annoying trial and error process of going everywhere, down every little walkway and every little alleyway, climbing up on anything you can climb up on, trying to get a clear shot so you can get up to the rooftops. Now, late in the game, they do give you the ability to grapple without the flappy dudes, and that's when the game does open up a little bit more, but it was crazy annoying. Anytime I got stuck in this game, it was because of the fog. On the flip side, some cool stuff happened also because I got stuck trying to figure out the fog. Like, I looked down the street, and there was this parade of ghosts coming down the street. I was like, what is that? And I was so frustrated with trying to figure out where to go next through the fog that I was like, screw it. I'm just going to walk into this group. And it took me to this battle arena where I fought just dozens and dozens of enemies. And ultimately never really got anything for it. Like, I got the money and I got, like, the ammo and stuff. Because the other part of this game is that, a lot like the recent Doom games, part of the ebb and flow of combat is getting your ammo back from the enemies that you fight. Because ammo in this game is rare. It's hard to get it. You run out of it all the time for your 3 different magic attacks. Even the bow, arrows are very scarce. So you have to I only use the bow when I had to use the bow. But part of the strategy, just like in the recent Doom games, is, okay, I know which enemies give me what kind of ammo type. And if I need the wind or whatever, I know this enemy will give me my wind ammo. I know this enemy will give me water ammo. I know you also do kind of the enemy prioritization that you do in Doom, where you're like, you know what, I need to take out the magic caster first or the healer first, who is healing all these other guys. So there's that kind of strategy to the combat, but it never gets as intense as Doom. They never throw that many enemies at you at a time unless you end up in one of those arena battles like I was just talking about. What else? Oh, another strategy in combat is every enemy has a core inside them. And as you chip down their health, eventually their core will be exposed. And once that happens, you can grapple onto the core in their chest and yank it out and get this very, very satisfying shower of ammo that comes out with them. And then there's strategy to it too, because you can chip down like all the enemies at the same time, like take a couple shots at each one until all their cores are exposed. And then it will link all their cores. So if you have like 4 enemies with their cores exposed, you can rip out all 4 at once, and that is supremely satisfying. And then there's a finisher that you have where you click both sticks, and when you do that, it sends out this shockwave that basically kills all the enemies around you. And then any future enemies for like 40 or 50 seconds, if you hit them once, it'll expose their core. So what you do is you send out the blast, you click both sticks, then you hit each enemy one time. And then all those enemies you hit have their cores exposed. Then you grapple their cores, and you can get like 8, 9 enemies and pull their cores out all at once. Again, feels very, very satisfying. And overall, this game is very satisfying. It is a lot of fun to play. The plot gets a little convoluted. Like, eventually you go to KK's hideout, which is where this scene is right now, and you find out that he has had this crew of people that have been hunting down this bad guy for years and years, and KK had died trying to fight him. In fact, all of them had died trying to fight him. A lot of the game is trying to figure out, like, what is happening for real and what is a spirit, or who is a spirit versus like a real person and someone who's actually alive. It's a little bit like Evil Within, actually, in that way. Because Evil Within was like that at certain points where you're like, is this really happening, or is this a dream, or is this like some awful flashback to something that happened in the past? There's a little bit of that flavor in this game as well. The bow eventually becomes completely OP. Like, it got to the point where my bow was so powerful that like I could snipe enemies before they even saw me. And really, the game just kind of became a cakewalk at that point. There are a bunch of different difficulty settings. As always, I played on the default normal difficulty setting, but there are some that make the game even easier, and it's already easy. It's not a difficult game at all. Again, the only time I really died was from the fog, because sometimes you'll just fall and you'll land in the fog and you can't get out. Or sometimes you just experiment and you're like, oh, is this not? Oh, it is fog. And then you're scrambling, trying to climb over like a chain link fence with barbed wire on the top that you can't get over. Stuff like that, I died a lot. But for the most part, you have to almost try to die in this game. Graphically, game looks pretty good. This is a PS5 and a PC game, so I don't think it even runs on PS4, to the best of my knowledge. I don't think it does. It's not a PS5 game like Ratchet or Demon's Souls or something that was like built from the metal or written to the metal for it. But it does look good. It does have a lot of the visual trickery that we count on with PlayStation 5. It has ray tracing. If you look at the reflections in the water and the puddles on the ground, it's pretty amazing, some of the stuff. But then if you get up close to like the character models or the dog, like there's no fur shading. The character models look a little crude, a little rough. It's a good-looking game, but it's one of those games where the closer you get to stuff, the worse it looks, which seems to be pretty common in this day and age with where this generation of consoles is at right now. But overall, it does look great, and it is, again, very satisfying. Here you can see the 3 different trees. So you have one for your magic, you have one for your equipment, and then you have just one for your general abilities. But none of them are all that big. You know, compared to most action RPGs, they're pretty small. They're about half the size, or roughly, something like that. What else? I think that's basically it. The problem is that the game, it just repeats way too much. The enemies repeat, the environments repeat. The story, I mean, it's good enough to get you through the 10 or 12 hours it takes to finish the game, but it starts to lose its steam pretty quickly as well. It's just, everything just repeats over and over and over again. They do have their Lady Dimitrescu, as you can see. She has big scissors, which honestly, do you remember the original Resident Evil 4? One of the enemies in that game had a huge pair of scissors, just like her. Yeah. So there's little nods to Mikami's prior work in this game. And that's
kind of I mean, one of the reasons they didn't do that because it was too similar to Clock Tower. I guess nobody cares about Clock Tower anymore.
Or really cared about it back then, even.
Not really. I will say Clock Tower 2 is one of the only games in history to ever make me jump.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Not really legitimately. It was I was playing at a friend's house. It was a PS1 game. Jesus. But there's a scene very early on where you run into like a security guard, and the security guard's like, she's like, you got to help me. I'm being chased. He's like, who's chasing you? Some kind of weirdo? And before he can finish weirdo, like Scissor Man stabs him through the chest from off camera, where clearly she could see him. But the sound effect is this really deep thunk, and my friend had this really good subwoofer that was turned way up, and it shook the whole room, and everyone in the room went, wow, what the fuck? It was just one of those things where the bass goes through you, and you're not ready for it.
Yeah.
So that was
a jump scare.
So well done, Clock Tower 2. You got me on that one.
Yeah, and there's some light stealth in the game as well, but you don't have to use it for the most part. There's one part in the game, actually a couple parts in the game, where they take your powers away, KK's powers away, and all you have is your bow and your stealth stuff. And that gives it a nice little twist. But again, for the most part, it's after the first couple hours. There's really not that much new. The side quests are not engaging. They front load the side quests so that the good ones are like the first couple that you come across. And then ultimately they just end up being like, hey, I need this thing, or I'm missing this person. Can you find this thing? Or you can find this person for me. And you do. And then they go off into the ether and you collect their souls, and you head to the phone booth and upload them and level up and rinse and repeat. So again, really auspicious the first couple hours, and then it just kind of loses steam and you just end up doing the same stuff over and over again. I did go through this game pretty quickly, as far as like just starting it and playing through the whole thing, because I was sick last week and I hate playing games when I'm sick. I don't know why. It's like the last thing I want to do. I did catch up on a couple movies that I've been waiting to watch while I was sick, but I do not enjoy playing games when I'm ill. I don't know why it is. So I had the code for this, and I just didn't feel like playing it. So when I finally did feel better, I did plow through this game in like day and a half or 2 days. So take that for what it's worth. I'm used to doing that, though. It usually doesn't affect my opinion all that much. But yeah, I would say I'm a little disappointed in it ultimately, Matt. Do you have any questions about it?
Not really.
Chat, if you guys have any questions about it, I'll answer them as well.
I guess it sounds like a wait for a sale kind of thing.
I would not buy this at full price. And obviously it's a PS5 game, so it's probably selling for $70.
Yeah, I think I'm sure there's some digital deluxe thing. That is even more.
Yeah, so I would definitely not recommend this at $60 even. $40 probably. I think it's probably the sweet spot for it.
I mean, it'd probably be $40 around early May.
Yeah. One thing I would say too is that there aren't a lot of games like this. Yeah. Like, I had to go back to The Darkness from, like, when did The Darkness come out? 13 years ago?
First one, yeah, I think it's way back there.
Yeah. So I had to go back.
Second one was not as good.
It wasn't, yeah. But I had to go back that far to find a true analog to this game, which is kind of good. You know, it's if you have a lot of disposable income and you place a high priority on playing stuff that does feel new and fresh, the first few hours of this, for someone who has a lot of money, probably worth the money that you're going to spend on it. But if you're someone who's frugal and let's be honest, this month has been insane, Matt.
Yeah, there's other stuff to play.
I mean, that's really tough that this game came out in this window, because I might be a little more apt to recommend it if it came out in the middle of June or something like that. Obviously, this needed to come out, or at least at a certain point, it needed to come out this fiscal quarter. I don't know if it matters now that Bethesda owns Microsoft, and this is a PlayStation exclusive from a Bethesda game that Microsoft owns. I think this is the last one of those, though.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the contract's got to be fulfilled. I'm sure this will pop up on Game Pass in a year.
Eventually, yeah. You're probably right. It probably has like a year exclusivity or something like that, and then it'll be a Game Pass game or whatever. And maybe that's the smart play, is to just wait for when you can play it basically for free on Game Pass. But the tone of the game is unique. Again, the character inside your head motif is something that doesn't happen that much in games anymore. Or really, ever, for that matter. And it does do a good job.
Johnny Silverhand.
Yeah, that's right. There's another one. But it does do a pretty good job of recreating Shibuya. I definitely felt like I was there, and I have been there countless times. So I feel like I have a pretty good read on whether they did a good job at that stuff or not. And I do feel like they did a good job of it, but it's minuscule compared to the real Shibuya 1. And it only has like a token couple areas that people will recognize. Obviously, the one is the big intersection that everyone sees on the interwebs, where billions of people cross every time the lights change. That's here. Although all the stores and buildings have been changed, so they don't have to pay the licensing for them or whatever. But the names are similar enough that you know what they're supposed to be anyway. And look, I would say I enjoyed most of my time playing this. It wasn't like it was a chore. The fog stuff is annoying, and that definitely got on my nerves. And there aren't enough. That's one thing I will say Elden Ring did pretty well, is if you get frustrated, there's something else to do. In this game, there's really not. There's all these side missions that'll pop up, but when you start doing them, they're not that interesting. And so if you get to the point like I did, where you're frustrated with trying to figure out your way around the fog or how to get through the buildings and stuff like that, there's not a lot of ways to kind of just pass your time while you wait for that epiphany that you need to figure out how to get through that stuff. Let me take a look at chat here and see if people have questions. Kevin Rafa, is the game hard? No, I already kind of answered that for you. I don't find it hard at all. There are harder difficulty settings that you can maybe jack it up to get more of a challenge, but I really had very little challenge in this game. In fact, the game got easier as it went, as I leveled up my magic abilities, and especially as I leveled up the bow, because the range on the magic isn't very far, even after you've leveled it all the way up, but the range on the bow just gets absurd, like to where like they can't even see you and you're killing them and sniping them from like 2 blocks away or whatever. So no, the game is not difficult at all. Let's see. What other questions you guys got here? Kevin Rafa, can you explore the city after completing the game? I honestly don't know. I did not go back and check. Sorry. I should have done that. You're right. Scorpio's Finest says Evil Within is 18 to 20 hours. Just finished both. Okay, well then this game is shorter than Evil Within. I thought I finished Evil Within in like 14 hours, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I finished the first one.
I finished the first one. I did not finish the sequel.
I thought both of them felt too long, even for what they were.
Yeah. Kungrim 1, how are the sound effects and soundtrack? They're great. The audio in this game is really good. The voice acting, okay, not exceptional. But the sound effects and the sounds of the enemies, I just got a new receiver, and I have really good like surround, like satellite speakers that are behind me. And when I would be out in the open world in Shibuya, I could hear like the demons like off in the distance, like wheezing or just like going through their animation routines or whatever. And it was unsettling for sure. In fact, that might have been the scariest part of the game. Now that I think about it, the audio. So yeah, I think the audio is really good. And again, I just got a new receiver with Dolby Atmos and all this other crap, and it sounds amazing on it. So yeah, it's really good. See what else? Not Sir, do you think there's DLC in the pipeline? They haven't talked about it.
No.
Which probably means no, I would guess.
It depends. Like, I guess it kind of depends what the contracts are for. I feel if there's no contract in place for DLC, then Bethesda's probably going to pull out of it.
Yeah, because why would it? It's like, wait, we're going to do DLC for a PlayStation
or maybe
exclusive.
it would come along at the same time as the other versions.
Yeah.
The Xbox version or something.
That's possible. You're right. DLC could maybe come out when it finally loses its exclusivity on PlayStation.
Yeah, like I could see like the one that comes out in a year being like on Xbox being like the the definitive edition or the KK's cut or something like that, and like you get an update for that on PlayStation, and then it's like one unit on the.
That's
Xbox.
Possible. If not, Cirque, if you're asking if there's like this obvious like cliffhanger or hook that just blatantly screams DLC, there's not.
There's no like microtransaction stuff in it.
I have not seen any
like
microtransactions.
Selling you outfits or anything?
No, I haven't seen anything like that. There are outfits that you unlock and you get as you play through the game.
That seems weird for a game that's first person, but
yeah, and they don't seem to do much. They show up in the cutscenes, but it doesn't give you like more powers or anything like that. They're not tied into your actual abilities in any way. They're just cosmetics. And you're right, that's weird because you don't really see your character hardly at all unless you're in a cutscene. Kongrim 1, does it seem like a possible cult hit? That's a good one because they're generally cult hits. There's a certain level of weird that needs to be imparted into the game. And I would argue that this game probably does have enough of that. Just like the main bad guy right there, Hanya. Him and his crew of miscreants are weird. And the plot in the game doesn't make a lot of sense. And like you're like, wait a minute, why does he care about my character's sister when I'm just some dude who got in a car accident in Shibuya? There's definitely some X factors in this game where I'm just like, what is even going on? And that generally tends to feed into games becoming cult hits. But if the Darkness didn't become a cult hit, and I don't think it did, then I think this probably won't either.
The best thing about the Darkness is that you can watch all of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
To Kill a Mockingbird is there in its entirety. When you're sitting on the couch with your girlfriend at the beginning of the game, and there's a TV in like a subway station or something that's playing The Man with the Golden Arm. And the whole thing is in there.
Dang. One thing I realized too, Matt, after
Black
playing...
and white movies don't cost a lot.
Yeah. One thing I realized after playing this too, and then I watched a trailer, is that if you watch a trailer for this, you pretty much see the whole game in the trailer. You see all the enemies. You see pretty much all the locations. You see all your abilities that you ever get. You even see some of the like late game powered up abilities that you get when you're almost finishing the game. You see most of the cinematics. It's not like an overly cinematic game, and they use a lot of them in the trailers. There's not much left to the imagination if you watch one of the later trailers for this game, which is crazy because they're like 90 seconds long. But it just goes to show you that there's just a lot of the stuff in it that's really repetitive. Sneaky asks, does it feel like you're in Japan, or is it like another American game just with a Japan filter on it? No, you feel like you're in Japan. In fact, by default, it uses Japanese voiceover. You have to select the English voiceover.
That's funny. I've seen a couple places where people are like, it doesn't feel Japanese enough to me. Like watching this stuff, and people are like, it's made by Shinji Mikami in Japan, takes place in Japan, and is voiced in Japanese unless you change it, and is based on Japanese mythology and folklore.
Yeah.
I don't know how much more Japanese something can be.
It's literally like 1,000,000,000% Japanese. Yeah. But it's not like the bad Japanese. We're going to get to a game that's the bad Japanese here in just a minute, actually. This is the good Japanese. Like
so this game, you're not trying to kill chaos.
Yeah, and it's not... We'll get to that in just about 5 minutes.
Oh.
So this is very Japanese, but it's the good Japanese. It's the kind of Japanese game that's handled well instead of not well. Surf Spider, thank you for Twitch Prime. That's awesome. Ashes in the Hourglass is KK Slider in the game. Not that I discovered.
They're missing an opportunity there.
Yep. Don Lionheart, thank you for Twitch Prime as well.
I feel like a giant cartoon dog playing a guitar on random street corners would not be out of place in this game.
Well, there are stores that you go to. And one thing I will say, too, is that, like, I finished the game. I had so much money. Because there's not really anything to spend it on. Like, you can go to these little stores that are run by cats with two tails. Again, I believe something from Japanese folklore.
Everything in there.
Yeah.
The wing guys you grapple to are Tengu, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they're called Tengu in the game, too. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, as someone who's been to Japan a lot and spent a lot of time in Japan, I think it handles it really well. So that's certainly another positive for the game. But Shiniki says, what's bad Japan? Oh, you're about to find out with our very next topic on today's GameFace. But it looks like that's all the questions we have in chat. I guess overall I would say I am a little disappointed in the game. I would probably call myself a Mikami fan. I look forward to all of his games. Some of his games have been, I believe, some of the best games ever made for the time that they were released. He always seems to be pushing the envelope in some way. But one thing I would say is that I can tell that he did not have much of a hand in making this game, and it was his underlings who were working on it. It does not have that requisite pleasant surprise level that a lot of his games have. There are some Easter eggs in here, too, for Resident Evil that if you dig around you can find. So there are nods to his previous work, but I would just say not enough. So there you go. That's Ghostwire Tokyo, only available for PC and PlayStation 5. But as Matt said, I do expect it to come to Xbox eventually. Maybe even Switch as a cloud game.
And I do think it'll be pretty cheap soon.
Yeah, I would not buy this at full price at all, unless you're rich, basically, and you have tons of disposable income, and you're looking for something different, then I would recommend it, because games like this don't come around very often. And Matt, that's actually what I want to end on. How the hell did this game get greenlit? Bethesda is insane to greenlight this game.
Yeah, I mean, you just like in the sense that that's not going to be a hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, giving Mikami another shot after the two Evil Withins, I guess. I don't know. I don't know why you'd think this was going to be a breakout.
I don't either.
I mean, there's everything Bethesda publishes outside of the stuff that Bethesda Softworks itself does, or Game Studios does. It underperforms every single time. It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad or anything. It's just none of it catches.
Really catches. Yeah, I mean, Deathloop, Game of the Year nominee for last year, didn't sell worth its squat.
Didn't sell too well.
Dishonored's never sold very well.
Dishonored never sold too well.
Prey didn't sell very well.
Prey was great, but didn't sell. Like, you just can't get a break over there. It's like no one. The mass audience doesn't seem to differentiate between those games and like Wet.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's a good analogy actually. So I don't know what Bethesda was thinking.
I mean,
greenlighting this
not knowing what Bethesda's thinking when it comes to publishing their second-party stuff is not uncommon.
Yeah.
Except for Doom. I mean, obviously Doom. Even Doom Eternal didn't sell what they thought it was gonna.
No. Man, that was a great game.
And that also got Game of the Year nods and recognition.
Yep.
But that doesn't translate into dollars.
It doesn't.
Because no one cares.
I don't think it's going to happen with Ghostwire Tokyo either.
I wouldn't think so.
And I would imagine he had probably hoped that this would turn into an IP, and it would be Ghostwire Los Angeles, Ghostwire New York City, Ghostwire London, or whatever. I don't see that happening, unfortunately.
Yeah, because Mikami hasn't directed anything since, the first Evil Within?
Like, directed, yeah. Where he was, like, elbows deep.
Yeah, like he runs Tango, but he didn't direct this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, it was mostly his underlings who worked on the game. So
well, he did say he wanted like to give younger developers a chance,
and he did. And honestly, they did a pretty good job on the game. Like it, as far as like its quality, no bugs, no issues, no crashes, any of that
it's
stuff.
really it really would have been better for it if it could have come out in like June, July, because I looked at the schedule. There's nothing coming this summer.
Yeah, it is pretty
well,
dry.
after early May, it's just like it's just a desert until
This year,
like,
I hope they
September.
do. We complained last year because they strung E3 out for like 8 weeks. This year, I hope they do that because we're going to need it. We're definitely going to need it to get through the summertime. But anyway, there you go. That's Ghostwire Tokyo for PS5 and PC. Probably coming to Xbox and Game Pass eventually. All right, let's move on. Now we're going to talk about a bad Japanese game. But oddly enough, both of these games are about the same on Metacritic.
Yep.
I think Ghostwire is at like a 7.5.
Yeah, and this is around 72.
It's like a 71, 72.
I missed my bet on this one on the game draft.
What bet was it?
I drafted this like 5th or something.
Yeah, but what was the bet?
I just bet that it was going to get high ratings because people are stupid about Final Fantasy. You know, if Final Fantasy VII Remake gets high ratings, like why wouldn't this? Because it's just as shitty. Like,
well, I would argue, Matt, having now played a lot of Final Fantasy Origins, that it probably did get a little Final Fantasy bump.
Yeah.
Because I think that 7.2 might be a little generous, to be honest.
I mean, I didn't play the full version of this because I refused to spend money on it, and so I played the demo, which was enough.
Which started? Did it start from the beginning of the game?
Yeah, because you can continue your save into the full game, so it starts from the start. Some of it's a repetition of the old demo, but a lot of it's the new version of things. They've refined some stuff. They changed the characters' looks to some degree. You still go through the same terrible tutorial, which is just like, all right, like. But I played what you could play of the demo, and that's plenty.
Where did it cut off at the boss fight?
Boss fight in basically the first mission, or maybe I think I might be able to go back to the town, like the town area where the king is, and talk to the princess. What's her name?
Yeah.
But I didn't do that because I just wanted to stop.
You just lost interest.
I have to admit, like, there's a bunch of stuff in this that looks nice. Like, I enjoy this shot of Garland, beating the shit out of everybody. But when you run into her for the first time, what's her name? Princess Mia or Sarah?
I can't remember.
You either see her for the first time, and she gets up and runs to you, like, it's embarrassing. Like, no one even attempted to animate her dress.
No.
Like, it's awful. Yeah. And it stands out because the rest of the game looks pretty good most of the time.
Yeah.
But, like, that was just like, what are you doing? Like, she looks like she came from another game. It's so weird.
So this, as I've said many times before, when I capture footage for games, I turn off the music, so that it's easier to edit with the footage for the future if you have the music turned off. You can use sound ups from the game, and the music won't clash with whatever background music that you have that you're in the edit that you're working on. And turning off the music in this game exposed it as just hilariously bad. Because you don't have the music to drown out, like to fill in the dead spaces between when they talk. And so there's just these awful, long, awkward pauses that are filled with grunts.
Right. Well, the thing about this, I mean, a lot of Japanese RPGs, but especially Final Fantasy and Square stuff, is one of the reasons, and I think people who have replayed Final Fantasy 5 or 6, the new versions, the remaster pixel versions, whatever that came out, have sort of rediscovered this maybe. One of the brilliant things about the old 16-bit RPGs is the way they work, and the reason a lot of people have such fond memories of them, and PS1 stuff, because there wasn't that much voice acting then, is all you had to do was read the text in your own head, which you can make anything sound good when you read it in your own head, and the music told you how to feel.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
Yeah.
And then Square has never, certainly in the Final Fantasy brand, Square has never learned how to present stuff dramatically or even comedically, really, in a way that works outside of that. And so when you turn that music off, you are seeing, like without the music to tell you how the tone of the scene's supposed to go, it has no idea what it's doing.
Yeah.
It's
awkward and
because
embarrassing.
tonally, this game and Final Fantasy VII Remake and a bunch of the stuff they do, tonally it can shift line to line. Like it's
well, not even just
crazy.
like the writing. Look at what was happening right here, Matt. You're on a spaceship.
You're on some kind of like super tech cyber platform fighting a Tiamat dragon with a sword, and you're using crystal tech. Like I don't know what is happening in Final Fantasy anymore. Like what's with the sci-fi shit?
I mean this thing
I've hated that since like
it's just all over the map.
Yeah, I mean I think that's been a problem for Final Fantasy since 10. Like 10 sort of had that weird sort of mix of like futurism and I mean 7 did it too, but 7 felt like a world that the world of 7 felt pretty coherent to me. So did 8. 9 went more medieval fantasy.
Well, look, you go from a spaceship fighting a six-headed dragon to a field of grain.
Field of grain with Frank Sinatra playing, and you're like, what are you doing? Like it is just everywhere. This
whole game is like
totally
this.
nonsensical.
From beginning to end. The plot makes no sense. What the hell? These are supposed to be the 4 warriors of light or whatever.
Like are they from another time?
I don't know.
Are they from our Earth and just got zapped? Because they don't seem like they know each other.
They don't. All of a sudden they show up and they're like, hey, we all have the same rocks.
And then
let's be bros.
In the original, so it's a remake of Final Fantasy 1, basically. Right. And in the original Final Fantasy 1, you get sent out to do stuff to prove yourself before you get sent after Garland to rescue him and stuff. And like, they skip all that in this. Like
he's there.
There's a quick cutaway. There's a nonsensical cut to them on a ship where he's like, it's like, I'm tired of doing all this monster hunting. And it's like, well, maybe now we'll get to I don't know. And then they do. And they just go, it's so weird.
The whole thing is just insane. It makes no sense whatsoever.
And this dude in his big fluffy coat, like, what is going on?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to have a spoiler from a game that's like 30 years old, but Garland was the bad guy in the game originally.
Yeah.
And now he's the guy you play as throughout almost the whole game. It's just, it's nuts. Like, Matt, I cannot believe.
Look at that dress run. What is happening?
I know. I cannot believe Square Enix gave the go-ahead for this, Matt.
I mean, I can believe they gave the go-ahead for it in the sense that, like, the concept isn't a bad idea. In terms of, like, doing a character action game that retells the story of Final Fantasy 1. Like, okay, I can get behind that. Like, Final Fantasy 7 Remake is essentially the same kind of idea with a more RPG, like, grounded combat system. But, like, that worked. That sold. I mean, I thought it was terrible, but it sold. Like, it was successful. So, like, why not? But, like, what they've done here, it just, like, baffles me repeatedly. And then today there was a whole thing that came out where, like, apparently the character models are, like, way more polygon heavy than they should be. And that's why the game has such terrible performance on PC. Like, one of the devs that was looking at the data said that the bats in this have double the polygons of the cutscene model for Kiryu in Yakuza 0. Like, which is, like a ridiculous, like why is that even imported into the engine kind of weird.
So Matt, right now there's a lot of people in chat trying to apologize for this game, saying that this is all intentional or just saying that they enjoy the game because it's so bad.
I mean, if you come into my house and piss on the floor intentionally, I'm still going to be mad at you. And not want you to keep doing it, which is about how I describe this game. And like, it's like the combat's not terrible. It's certainly better than the original demo they put up like last year or whenever that was.
Yeah. The game's easier now than the demo was.
Yeah,
too.
Definitely. And they added an even easier difficulty mode, which they constantly tell you exists. It's not even on the selection screen. It's easy and normal and hard, I think. And then there's a casual mode, which it constantly says like, you can switch to casual mode if you want. You want to switch to casual mode? I'm like, I haven't died yet, dude. I don't know why you keep throwing casual mode at me.
I died in boss fights, but that's the way the game is. The rank and file enemies, you just wipe the mat with them. Like, it's so easy. And then the boss fights are like Souls games boss fights. Like, that's when you actually have to actually use the combat system to actually win a fight.
Yeah, and there is Souls elements, like the potions, like the reef and there's bonfires.
You get 5
basically.
potions every time you save. There's bonfires where
the enemies. It's so weird. Like, I know this is just like me, but like, the fact that the characters keep posting, hey, look, there's more of those cube things over there. We should take a rest. I'm like, don't call out the weird gameplay mechanics. Like, what do you... Stop it. Like you're just constantly noting how weird this is.
Yeah. It is definitely a cross between, like, Final Fantasy Camp and Neo. Which is basically Team Ninja's take on Dark Souls, Neo.
Yeah.
And but it's actually harder than Dark Souls, which...
Yeah, Neo is definitely harder than Dark Souls, for sure. This wasn't that bad, but like I didn't find it particularly engaging. I do like the finishing. There's some elements of it that I think are interesting, but not particularly enthralling. Like the fact that you know there's all the elemental stuff, and if you know there's the obvious like throw water at a fire guy and it does more damage, but you can overload them with their own elements sometimes, which is a neat idea, and that gives you a different result. So I like that.
The game's combat's flashy.
I give him credit for having different like finishing animations for like every enemy. Like like that's impressive.
There's parts of it that you're like, hey, there's kind of a good game buried in here.
Yeah, there's something there. It's just the problem is that like even when I would kind of get into the combat, which I don't, is part of the problem here is that it's coming out around the same time as Elden Ring, and I'm like, I could just go play Elden Ring and have way better combat than this. But it's something to be said for this. They have improved it from that first demo, like tremendously. So
the combat is pretty deep, but you never have to use it.
You never need to use it.
Except for the boss fights.
Yeah, which is like a weird thing because it really is a spike. At least in the early, this first one was a spike to me.
No, it's that way the whole way through. Every boss fight is like way harder than anything that you had done for the previous like 30 minutes.
And it's not undoable, but it was just one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, I got to pay attention now. Okay, because I've mostly just been sort of breezing through it until then.
The combat is flashy. It catches your eye. Like you said, there's a different finisher for every single enemy type. And there are so many enemy types. Unlike Ghostwire Tokyo, there are lots of enemies in this. And they're so bizarre. Like, you fight pirates, and then you fight like a crazy, like, mutated spider.
We are talking about the series where at one point somebody suplexed a train. So, there is precedent there. And there's just the usual sort of weird anime presentation thing where like everybody's doing the grunting and the gasping.
And the posturing and the posing.
And the posing, like the guy with the red hair, whose name is Jed, I think. Yeah. Like he just keeps doing the weird pose thing where it's just, like he's like, oh yeah, I'm like, are you all doing a skit together? Like what is like there he's doing it again.
And he always does the thing with his chin where you takes his thumb off the end of his chin.
Yeah, which I'm like, I don't think that's a universal gesture, guys.
Yeah, but the crazy thing, there's actually tons of depth to this game and the combat. But
then it goes back to one of the cutscenes, and I'm embarrassed to be playing it all over again.
Yeah,
that's an issue.
Like there's tutorials.
That looks cool.
In
like
this.
that. I mean, I remember that design in the original Final Fantasy. That's cool that they did that. I like that.
Yeah. And the combat is actually pretty deep. Like there's this system called the Soul Shield, where on the PlayStation controller you hold like the circle button, and there's a risk reward to it because it creates a wider window to block the enemy, and then you can counter very quickly and do a lot of damage. But you also can basically break yourself and leave yourself completely helpless and open to attacks. But again, like you never have to use it. Like I didn't even use it on any of the bosses. Like.
I mean, you can kill them faster with it, because like especially if it's a character that's doing the purple attack, so you can like use their ability against them,
right?
Because you basically get a quick use of their ability if you do the shield block.
Yep.
And you take way less break damage than you would have if you blocked it normally. And there's some attacks that will just break your block anyway because they last so long, and the only way to do it is to shield block. So that's an interesting dynamic, but like
I just don't feel like the game explains like best case.
It's terrible at explaining itself.
Like I never could figure out when to use the Soul Shield. I'm like, so I didn't. I hardly ever use it throughout the game, and I didn't need it. Even the bosses, like I hardly used it, and I still managed to beat them. And you're right, it probably maybe took a little longer to beat them, but
yeah. And the other problem I have with that is like, Elden Ring is not great at explaining some things. You got to learn how some things work and that the counter. But like, you know what? I learned that in almost all that stuff I learned in Elden Ring fighting normal enemies. Mm-hmm. I do not in this game. It's like the normal enemies you can just beat with like basic attacks. You can use the same and then you get to a boss, and if you haven't learned those systems, but the game doesn't try to teach you them by giving you enemy. Because at a certain point in Stormvale Castle in Elden Ring, I'm like, I'm not damaging these guys. Right. What am I supposed to do? And then I learned how to do the counter, and that the counter would stun them, and then I could do the critical, and I'm okay. That's how that works. I get that. But and that was just on normal enemies. There's nothing like that in this. It's you just breeze through stuff until you get to a boss, and you're like, well, I hope I have the tools I need. Yep. And generally you do, but like you haven't been forced to learn how all that stuff works on kind of a nitty gritty level. So it's not second nature unless you've decided that like, oh, I'm going to learn how this works just in case, or like maybe a boss, I guess, teaches you need to do that. But then like you're sort of busy working your way through the regular enemies then, because you don't need to do that to beat them, but you kind of want to do that so you get more practice. So when you're fighting a boss, you kind of know how that works. But then you got to learn the boss's timing. I mean, I don't know why that's less interesting than what like Souls games do, but it is less interesting, and it's so.
Well, it doesn't build your skills for the tougher battles that you're going to have to take part in.
It's faster, and like you can interrupt yourself. You can cancel into blocks easier in this. Obviously, it's a little more Devil May Cry-ish, but then you get to a point where I'm like, why am I just not playing Devil May Cry?
Right.
Like it's like there's better versions of both the Souls elements in this game. You could play a Dark Souls game, and in the more character action elements, you could play Devil May Cry or Bayonetta.
Yeah,
that are a bit way better than this. So I don't like. It feels like it's just sort of taking these two subgenres and mashing them together and getting something worse than both of them.
Yeah, and the weird part is like, so as you play, you have two guys who fight alongside you, but you're supposed to be the 4 heroes of light.
Yeah, and they bring that up. They're like, your crystals are the wrong color. Yeah, and there's supposed to be 4 of you, so we're kind of reluctant to do this.
But you can never fight with all 4 of them at once. You have to choose to leave one of them out of the party, and one of them is a magic caster, and that seemed to be the one that I always left out for whatever reason. Maybe
I ended up playing a mage more than the other classes.
Really?
For me, like I just found the elemental stuff more interesting.
That is one cool thing about this game and it's kind of important, is that you can basically have 2 different classes or jobs lined up at once, and you can swap between them at will. And that's kind of cool. One thing that I did notice, though, is I recorded, I don't know, probably the first 2 or 3 hours of this game, and then I usually take that footage and chop it down into like 20 minutes of B-roll of the best stuff. And when going through
it's so dark.
It is. Going through all that footage, you spend so much time in menus.
Yeah,
because the gear in this...
endless gear.
Endless. And you're not only outfitting your character, you're outfitting all the other party members... And you're just constantly getting something that's either the same or just one level higher.
And they're not good menus.
No, and they're hard
intuitive
to navigate. And either you're doing that or you're constantly leveling up your jobs. Like, you spend a lot of time in the menus.
The other thing, this is a minor UI thing, but like it will pop up the little things like you have job points to spend, and you go into the job points menu, and there's nothing you can afford with like one job point, but it will not stop telling you have another job point.
Well, it took me a while to figure out that like eventually there's like 6 different disciplines or whatever, and sometimes you'll have job points in just one of those disciplines, and because you'll go to like the one that you're using, you're like, I don't have any job points. Then you start using like R1 or R2 to cycle through them. You're like, okay, the Ronin or whatever has like 3 points that I can use or whatever. And there's a lot of flexibility in how you play this game, and I think that's the highlight. I think the combat in general is the highlight of this game. I think it strikes a pretty good balance for people who are Final Fantasy fans who don't want to play games like Dark Souls or Elden Ring. It's not as hard as those games. You can make progress. Now, you're probably going to hit a wall.
It has difficulty modes, for one thing.
Right. And you're probably going to hit a wall whenever you go to fight a boss here or there. But for the most part, you're going to be able to make it through the levels without too much of a pushback. And I think that's the right call for the Final Fantasy audience in general, I would argue. But it is weird that this is all about, the 4 warriors of light. You only play with 3 of them at a time. Like, get one more in there, bro. Like, it just... do what you got to do to make it work. Like, take some polygons out of that stupid spider that you were talking about and put him towards another character.
Go ahead and have them fight with... even if it's something you do later on. Maybe they do. I don't know. I'll never know. Unless someone talks about it on a... plays it and talks about it on a stream.
But the stances, like, that you can choose between 2 at a time, like, they make a big difference depending on the enemies that you're fighting. You talked about kind of the elemental stuff a little earlier. That makes a big difference. When you die,
basically it's the usual, like, knock their stamina bar down until they get stunned and
and finish them off. And then when you do die,
which at least tends to be a little more intuitive than it was in Final Fantasy.
True.
Remake.
That's true. When you do die, for the most part, like before boss fights, there's always a save point, so you don't have to run back too far to fight a boss.
Look, more of those cube things. We should rest. It's like, what are you doing?
But there are some times where, like, there's a lot of distance in between the 2 save points, and I have died, and you have to go all the way back. But any physical alterations you've made to the level the first time through stay.
Yeah.
So,
although enemies will respawn.
They do. The enemies respawn, but I just run past them. Because
now you really are a Dark Souls player.
Seriously, yeah. And I've also discovered that in Elden Ring. Sometimes just running past
just
everything
go past
is
them.
the best thing to do.
There's a point at which it's just not worth your time.
It's not. It's not worth the stress. It's not worth dying and like having to go back and get your stuff.
That's one of the reasons the farm sections are a big thing with those, because those are more worth your time to farm up and get a few levels as opposed to just fighting these individual enemies for like however long. It's going to take less time to just farm for a bit.
Yeah, and you have a bit more control over it too. You're more likely to succeed at it.
Yeah, this though, like you get job levels like candy in this game. Like you just constantly happen.
Oh, I mean, just watching the B-roll, you see it just over and over again. Job level up, job level up, job level up. Yeah. And again, that's why you're always in the menus in this game.
Yeah, it's kind of counterproductive because there's a point at which it just progress by necessity is so incremental because of that, and especially with the loot. It just feels like, does it matter? I know. Should I even be doing this? Does it matter that I got +2 more because I got a great sword +6 instead of 4? Like, and I don't know. I don't know. I'm never gonna. I didn't play it long enough to really discover that, and because I don't care.
Yeah, technically and artistically, it's pretty much a disaster. The cutscenes are horribly edited. The camera angles that you choose for the cutscenes are weird. The cuts are weird. Once I did turn the music back on, the audio cuts out, just cuts off. Like there's no fades. Like. It's just a mess, like artistically and graphically and audio-wise.
The main guy is completely Jack is horrible. Like just like there's a way to do a gruff, like no nonsense sort of like all business protagonist and make him like at least like interesting, and it just doesn't happen here. Like I don't care why he's so mad all the time.
I don't either.
And no one else sems to really notice. It's
no,
very
they're just
weird.
Like la-di-dee, la-di-da.
It's like everybody's having their own story, their own conversation, and not ignoring him. Like why in the world is that princess so enamored of him when he's a complete ass to her the whole time?
Yep. And there's like no consistent anything to this game. It's like we said, you start the game, you're on a spaceship fighting a 6-headed dragon. Next thing you know, you're in some king's court, in like a traditional fantasy setting.
And now you're in an evil temple.
Right, then you're walking through like a village full of peasants. Like this, the whole thing makes no.
But he's wearing
sense.
J. Crew.
Yeah,
you know? And you're like, what?
And he wears headphones. Like, where did the headphones come from? Like, what did?
Came from Scalebound. That was.
It's just crazy.
He bought him from the Scalebound guy after he got fired.
And I guess really at the end of it all, I'm just wondering, who is this game for, Matt?
I don't
because
know.
Final Fantasy fans, I don't believe are going to like this game at all. The storytelling's terrible. The story is absurd.
I think they're gonna. I mean, I've already seen like the Final Fantasy fans have convinced themselves they like this game.
Oh, they like it.
Mostly, I think.
Wow.
But I think you're going to eventually see like it's going to have that thing where like, 6 months from now, suddenly everybody can finally talk about its flaws without getting dogpiled by things.
Good Lord.
I mean,
they're so obvious.
Not as bad as Elden Ring. I mean, it's you're at the. I mean, what Stephanie Sterling has made at least 2 videos already about how toxic it can be, pointing out a flaw in Elden Ring.
Right. Yeah.
Like literal death threats for like noting that like this isn't perfect.
So silly.
But so it's not that bad. But I do think people are so starved for modern Final Fantasy content that I think they're just gonna like convince themselves they like it.
Well, what I'm going to tell you is if you're one of those people who loves Final Fantasy, if you support stuff like this, you're going to keep getting more of it. And I don't care how much you've deluded yourself into believing it, this game is a piece of crap.
I mean, I'd say the same thing about Final Fantasy Remake, but what do I know?
I mean, I didn't enjoy Remake all that much.
No, to be fair, you're not going to get any more of that anytime soon, apparently.
Yeah, doesn't look like it.
I feel bad for the people who like Final Fantasy Remake. Like you're gonna, I don't know if we're gonna get that part 2 this generation.
Final Fantasy 16.
I hope we do.
Hopefully, not too far away.
I think that's really far away. I think it's next year if we're lucky.
Yeah.
We might see it this year. I think we're gonna see it this year, probably at E3 time.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think so. Like, it's a bad time to be a Final Fantasy fan, I think. Even if you liked Final Fantasy Remake, I just feel like they're gonna blue ball you for all your work. And if you think Final Fantasy Remake Part 2 is the end, no, there's gotta be at least 4 of those.
Yeah,
you're gonna be buying those till 2033.
This game is so random. It's like I don't know if when you were kids you guys called it the same thing, but when I was a kid, we would go into 7-Eleven and we would like get a big gulp. And we'd mix every flavor that they had into one flavor, and we'd call it a suicide.
Yeah, that's what we called it, too.
And sometimes you'd get it right, and you'd be like, damn, this tastes
really
that
good. Worked.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just put too much Dr. Pepper in.
And you end up pouring it, you end up dumping it right into the trash. And this game, to me, is like the suicide that tastes like crap.
Yeah, it was the one where it's like, Oh, you put too much Sprite in.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that with the cola doesn't
really work.
Yeah.
And that's what this game reminds me of. It's a suicide that I went into 7-Eleven and made on a hot summer's day.
We're just like, nope.
And I walked out, took one sip of it, and just dumped it into the trash can.
Like you respect the idea. Yeah. You respect what was trying to happen, but it didn't happen.
It just didn't. Yeah. I would not recommend. I can't think of anyone I would recommend this game to, because if you're a Souls fan, it's too easy. There's not enough challenge throughout the consistency of the game, and there's Elden Ring. There's no way I would ever recommend this.
And if you're a character action fan, there are better character action games. Like the only reason is like you've played those other character action games, the better ones, to death.
Yeah,
you have nothing else to play.
I mean, I would recommend Ghostwire Tokyo over this.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it way more.
I mean, what I would say, I think it's limited time, so I do it fast. But I would say like download the demo. Play the demo. If you like the demo, the save continues on to the full game. So if you really like it, you can just buy it and play it that way.
And you bring up a good point, too, because the demo is very representative of the actual game.
It felt that way.
It is. Because in that demo, you see all the insanity.
Yeah, it does definitely tip its hand on all
You see all
levels.
of it. You see the terrible writing, the weird voice acting, the grunts, the jumping of tone, the jumping of settings that doesn't make any sense. You get all of it in that
how is this in the same world as the weird cyber platform?
I know.
I don't
That's what
get
I'm saying. I don't get it.
Why is everyone running around with swords when you have lasers?
It's nuts. There's a lot of people in the chat saying Final Fantasy VII Remake is great.
I mean, that is an opinion that you can have.
One that I will not agree with, but that's an opinion. That's for sure. If you guys have any questions about this game, get them into the chat now. I'll answer anything that I can. I have not finished this game, and I don't think I ever will finish this game, but I've probably put, 12 hours into it at this point, something like that.
Maybe an hour.
I've made it a good ways into the game, enough to know that I do not want to play anymore.
Yeah, I'm okay never touching this.
This was one of those games where I finished the B-roll. It was finished rendering for the show, and I was like, phew.
Miller time.
Exactly. That's when sometimes my job is work. I mean, it's always work because I have to spend a lot of time doing it, but sometimes, no matter how much time I spend doing it, it is work. And playing this game, to me, was work. Let's see if we have any questions. Here's one. Kevin Raffa. Is this the worst Final Fantasy game?
Oh, no.
No.
I mean, I think it's definitely better than Dirge of Cerberus.
Yeah. Is it better than Crystal Chronicles?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's better than it's better than 13. I hate 13.
I only played 13 for 5 hours, I think.
I've tried to play 13 4 times. And the last time I tried to play it, I played it on PC with cheat engine shit. So I didn't have to think about anything. And I still fell asleep playing it. I gave up. Although I like the second Final Fantasy 13-2 a lot.
I've heard that one. I didn't even try that. I also had trouble.
It's a more traditional RPG and has time travel stuff in it. I liked it.
I also had trouble getting through Final Fantasy X, but I did play a lot of that at least.
Yeah, I played 10 is the first Final Fantasy game I did not finish.
Yeah. In
the main series. That's the first one I got to a point where I'm just I think I was 2/3 through it or something. I was just you know what? I don't care.
Well, I had people who were way ahead of me, and that I was able to talk to about the game, and the way that they were talking about it, I was like, this is going down the wormhole that I do not want it to go down, and I never did finish that game either.
I mean, in terms of, you're getting into spin-off stuff, I think it's better than, Crisis Core.
Yeah.
Or, that kind of, if you're talking about, because you really can't compare it to mainline stuff too much, because it's so different.
I am really disappointed that this game is from Team Ninja. I'll just want to say that. Again,
I don't think Team Ninja is Team Ninja as we know it.
Yeah, I don't think it is either.
The people who made Ninja Gaiden are long gone.
Yeah.
This is people who were probably interns when Ninja Gaiden was being made.
Probably right. Yeah.
And it's not like it's terrible in terms of, I don't think it was their choice to do the tone shift, because it's the tone problems and the terrible writing and the terrible storytelling and the awful characters and the weird, aesthetics are very in line with what Square makes for everything these days. So I don't think that was Team Ninja. I think they did their job as a combat designing team pretty well.
Yeah, that part of it's great. But I can't believe still Square Enix signed off on a lot of this stuff. It's it doesn't care anymore about its canon or its lore.
Yeah, well, I love that they'll do this.
Or maybe it never did.
They'll do this, but then they'll be like, we don't know if that Guardians of the Galaxy game really worked.
Right.
It's just
right.
Really?
That's a good point. It's bizarre. I don't know what's going on there, but something.
I mean, well, I don't know why they signed. I mean, I know fiscally why they signed off, but why they signed off on Avengers being a game as a service,
right?
And then they make this, and it's just like,
this is not a game as a service.
Not a game as a service. Like, so good on you there. And there's not even microtransactions stuff that I saw.
Too bad the game just blows.
But it's just like, what is it? Like, what? How are those two people in the same universe? How come no one wants to know why he has buttons?
Yeah.
And then like Jed comes up and he's wearing like Adidas or something. I don't get it.
It's really weird. Minority Game says, "Did you kill Chaos?" That's the thing. So everybody, there's like a meme about this game about how he's just like, Chaos. I must kill Chaos. Like, and 2 hours into this game, they're like, nobody knows what Chaos is or if it even exists.
Yeah. Or why you want to kill it so bad. He's like, it's not a dream or a goal. It's a thirst and a hunger. And they're like,
you remember that?
Okay. Like,
I just want to listen to my Walkman, bro. Yeah. It's so weird. Oh man!
And it was the whole thing where it's like, oh, you got cut, and it's like nothing little spit won't come, and like they keep coming back to the spit thing as a running gag. I'm like,
oh yeah.
And the thing's like, it's like he's got medicine, and the girl's like, oh, can you share some with the soldiers? And he doesn't have any medicine, does he? He's like, oh, and I was like, what is this? It's this scene. This is the scene.
This is it. Yeah. Vincent says, leading contender for game we didn't get for the Game of the Year awards at the end of the year.
Game we didn't get, I feel, requires a lot of praise to be lavished on it.
Because this is sitting at a 70.
I feel like no one's going to remember this at the end of the year.
Some of the people in our chat are kind of on it. They're kind of liking it. I don't know. Maybe. It's a contender. I'll put it to you that way.
It's in the conversation, but I feel like there's probably going to be something else that like becomes a darling and... You know,
yeah, something.
For once, the From game probably wouldn't be for you. I mean, you don't like it that much, but I think you get it more now.
Yep, it probably will not make the list for me this year. Swanland, intentional camp or unintentional?
I think always unintentional.
I think it's unintentional. Absolutely.
I don't think they get it.
There's no way. They're not smart enough to do this intentionally. They're just not.
No, and at some point you'd think they'd realize that like this is one of the barriers to like mass sales in the West.
Yeah, they never get it.
It's so weird.
They never get it. Kevin Roffa, better than Final Fantasy 15? No, I liked Final Fantasy 15 a lot more, but that's a good question for you because you hated Final Fantasy 15.
I mean, the combat in this is better.
I'd agree with that. Everything else to me is worse.
But like what 15 was after was more interesting. The road trip with a bunch of buddies kind of in the open world. I mean, the open world in that is weird too because it's like Route 66 in the 60s, but it's also again mixing the modern day stuff with the fantasy stuff is very weird because none of that really it's not that it doesn't mesh, but it's like that terrible Netflix movie Bright. Where like orcs and fantasy stuff are in like modern day Los Angeles and Will Smith is a cop and all that stuff. It's basically like a Shadowrun movie, but except it's awful. But the problem is like the divergence of history is like 2,000 years ago there was a Dark Lord who like led the orcs in a rebellion, and like so the orcs are discriminated against 2,000 years later because of that, and everyone talks about the Dark Lord. But like everything still happened in history the same way. Like Los Angeles is still called Los Angeles. So apparently Spanish conquistadors came across and took over the whole thing and like named the city Los Angeles. Or like there's still Crips, which means there's the Crips gang. But so that means there was the transatlantic slave trade, which led to like led to emancipation, but was still like discrimination and Reconstruction and work. There was redlining in the housing districts in Los Angeles, which is how you ended up with these areas and neighborhoods where there was no economic advantage or any economic possibilities, which is why the Crips formed as like kind of a response to that sort of socioeconomic pressure. So apparently that still happened, but there's orcs. Like you can't diverge that far and expect society and everything to look the same. Like you can't. You're not going to still have Stand By Me, Frank Sinatra, and like convertibles at gas stations, and also there's a dragon 40 yards away. Like that doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense.
People turn their brains off for stuff that they think that they should like. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. But I don't think any amount of turning your brain off is going to make you think that the plot and the characters and the writing and the cinematics in this are anything approaching good.
No,
I just don't think that they are.
There's a standard here that is just not being met.
Swallow said the game is the chaos. Yep.
I feel like I would probably rather have to play 15 again than play through
I'd rather
the rest
play
of
15
this.
than play this. Absolutely. I played a lot more of 15 than I played of this 2 hours, hours-wise.
In part because I haven't played 15, like the revamped version with all the DLC, which is apparently a little better and more coherent.
Yep.
And also because like I appreciate what they're after more, and like I do like the two, the Dark Souls stuff and the character action stuff that this is drawing from, but I just don't think it matches up to that. Whereas Final Fantasy 15 doesn't really have an analog. No, there aren't really a lot of.
There's a reason.
Giant open world weirdo JRPG. Buddy road trip. Like at least it's different, right?
Yeah.
And at least you get to look at Ignis's beautiful food.
Yes. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. How food was rendered in that game.
The best looking food. The food is the best looking thing in that game.
Yeah. Yep. So anyway, there you go. That's Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. That's 2 thumbs down from Matt and I.
Yeah, I can't.
Neither one of us would recommend buying this game at full price. What would you pay for this game, Matt?
Someone would have to pay me.
Really?
For this game. Like, yeah, there's
$25.
Like
if you're a Final Fantasy
like, were
fan.
the day to come where it was like $5 in a sale, maybe.
Yeah.
Just to like be able to show people how stupid this is. And it keeps. I mean, I think I said it when they first showed it, but it continually reminds me of that 3D Castlevania game. Not the good one, not the Mercury Steam ones. The one I think was
Castlevania 64.
No, the PS2 one. I think Lament of Innocence. I think it was, where it was either Lament of Innocence or Curse of Darkness. I can't remember which one it was. Yeah. But there's a thing where he comes to the Belmont character. The main character comes to the gate of the castle, and Dracula is like taunting him, and he's just like, you cannot defeat me. I am beloved by the night. And the Belmont guy goes, I can't remember which Belmont it is. He goes, I'll kill you and the night.
Oh, that's right.
I'm like, what? Like, what does that even mean? You can't kill a time of day. If you could, daylight savings wouldn't be a thing anymore.
Yeah. AJ's asking, are the reviews too high or are they fair?
I think they're too high.
I think they're
way too high. There's a Final Fantasy bump.
It's a 7.2 right now on Metacritic, and that to me is too high.
On the 7 to 9 scale, this is a 6 if I ever saw one. If I was actually if I was doing like an X-Play review, I would be at a 2 and really have to have a conversation with Adam about whether it should be a 1.
And he would be like, we're giving it a 1.
Yeah, he would probably give it a 1. That's probably not super fair. There'd be a little spite to that.
Yeah,
but like,
it's not worth a 1. It's not a 5 point
definitely
scale.
not.
Yeah,
like a 1 is a broken game that doesn't work properly, but 2 out of 5, I would definitely consider it. 3 out of 5 if you're really forgiving of all the anime tropes.
Sneaky says, why are these reviews too high, but Elden Ring's 10s aren't? I think we both said that they were too high.
I do think Elden Ring is overrated.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna argue with it because it helps my fantasy team a lot. Like, that is the best second pick in the history of the fantasy game draft, and will probably remain so for a very long time.
Yeah.
But the fact that game has like a 97 average is crazy.
It is crazy. We've said that already.
Yeah.
You guys forget what we say. I don't know if you're watching other podcasts and like thinking that what other podcasts are saying or what we're saying.
Also, note that in the 1.03 update, they added on the map, it shows where all the NPCs are now. So much for artistic integrity. I guess I don't have to keep that journal anymore. Oh, it's almost like usability matters.
Oh, man. Nolan Elric says 97 is too low. Okay, we got to move on. But there you go. Those are our impressions of Final Fantasy Origin. Both of us say don't buy it. I'd say maybe $20 if you're a hardcore Final Fantasy fan.
Yeah, I hope it comes to Game Pass or something.
Yep, and it probably will. Like everything else.
Yeah.
It eventually comes.
That might be just sort of like Guardians. It's sort of like, oh, that didn't sell what you thought it was going to sell. How about we give you some money and you throw it on Game Pass? That might happen with this one.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Hogwarts Legacy. I will admit, Matt, a game that I thought at a certain point we may never see. All the different stories that we had heard about development problems that they were having with the game, and some of the lead developers were, I don't even know what the right verbiage is to use to describe them. But let's just say less than ideal for a lot of fans who are looking forward to the game. Obviously, Miss Rowling has had her issues with certain groups who wanted to really be excited about the game. We heard development problems from Avalanche in general about changing focus of the game throughout development. But now
this game is kind of cursed at this point.
It does seem that way. But now it appears...
There's another unforgivable curse, it turns out, and it's this game.
Yep. But now, Matt, it appears that the game is rounding into form. And not only that, it appears that it has signed some sort of a marketing deal with PlayStation where PlayStation is going to feature the game as if it were kind of an exclusive, even though it's not.
Yeah, it's definitely doing like the lead platform thing here.
Yep. And there was a state of play over the last couple of days for the game.
Probably because Microsoft wouldn't touch it.
Maybe for cultural reasons.
Yeah,
possibly.
I think Microsoft is probably more aware of the problems with rolling.
It could be.
I also note that the website for this game goes to great lengths to convince you that J.K. Rowling has nothing to do with this game outside of owning the license they had to pay the fee for.
Interesting.
Very clear that she didn't write any of this and is not involved in any of it.
Okay. Well, and then Sony dedicates basically an entire state of play to the game. 14 minutes of gameplay from Hogwarts Legacy. We had very little from the game before this,
There's a lower third no one's going to get under 40.
Yep. I knew it when I wrote it, too. I do wonder what percentage of people in the chat get the lower third for this topic. Mm-hmm. If you get it, just type a 1 in the chat.
Did that even air outside of the U.S.?
I don't think so.
Like, if you're in the U.K., are you going to get that?
Probably not. Well, you just gave them a hint as to what it is when you said aired.
Yeah.
So
I narrowed it down. I narrowed it down to television shows.
Yeah, you did. But 43 years old, Nolan Elric gets it. Corey Film gets it. M. Shane Clark. Actually, a lot of people are getting it.
Yeah.
Didn't Pachter reference
does reference
I think he did reference it one time, actually. Yeah.
I think he did say that. Yeah, that does sound familiar.
Quite a few people are getting it. Okay. I'm proud. I'm proud to say that you're our audience.
House Horseshack.
Hey, Nolan busted out the Horseshack. That is one of the craziest characters in the history of television. Yep. Horseshack, I would argue. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, people are still putting the ones in here. Welcome Back, Kotter. Yep. It was a TV show from the 80s?
70s.
70s?
Yeah.
And it was a TV show about a teacher who taught in Brooklyn, I believe.
Yeah, like a inner city school in Brooklyn kind of thing with a bunch of
a really diverse group of
diverse group of students, but like not the brightest.
Yeah,
but they're good kids.
They're good kids, good hearts.
Yeah,
it was a heartwarming show, I guess is the best way to put it. And it was very popular, but it didn't run for very long. It didn't last very long. John Travolta.
Yeah, Travolta. It was Travolta before he got his big break.
Yeah, he was really the star. Vinny Barbarino, was that his name in the show?
Barbarino. He was the breakout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, and he had long hair. And...
Yeah, he was the Draco Malfoy of.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Of Welcome Back, Kotter.
So anyway, that lower third reference is Welcome Back, Kotter, an old television show that I knew most people would not get when I decided to run it. But anyway, let's talk about Hogwarts Legacy. They showed a heaping helping of this game. 14 minutes of it. After we had just one trailer that we've been running over and over again on GameFace for the last 2 years. They pretty much laid the game.
Not even a trailer, it was like a leak.
What?
Wasn't that like a leak at one point?
Well, that initial trailer did leak at first, yeah. And
it was like a proof of concept thing?
Yeah, and now we're actually seeing stuff in this footage that was in that leaked trailer, which is interesting.
Like that, I remember that, like something similar to this.
And the animal training
yeah,
was in that leaked trailer initially, and now it's really exposed in this as like a big part of the game. Hogwarts Legacy, it is a single-player, open-world action RPG. You do have NPC companions that join you on some of your quests, but the story is all about your own legacy. You do create your own character when you start the game. The game is set about 100 years before anyone cares.
Yes.
So Harry Potter and that whole crew of people, they are 100 years away from when this game is set. So I don't understand, like, how long did Hogwarts exist before Harry and crew came along?
Oh, centuries and centuries.
Okay.
Yeah, like medieval times.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know how long it had been around. So this
it's like everything in Europe. It's been there. It's castles up to here. It's been around forever.
So this actually isn't set relatively speaking, all that far away from Harry and company.
Not in a geological sense, no.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably, what is this, like early 1900s?
Yeah. Oh no, it's set in the late 1800s.
Okay, so yeah, exactly 100, because Harry Potter takes place in the early 90s.
Yep.
Harry Potter's our age.
Yeah, technically. Yeah. He was born around when we were.
Yeah.
Yep. So you create your witch or your wizard, and you start out, it's kind of like Harry Potter. You start out, you're kind of a celebrity right from the beginning. You're a fifth-year student, so you've kind of skipped past a lot of the other stuff the other students have had to do. Your ties to an ancient magic put you on a collision course with a goblin rebellion led by Ranrock, aided by his alliance with the dark wizard Victor Rookwood, who both present formidable threats to the entire wizarding world. To unearth the mysteries behind ancient magic and stop Ranrock's rebellion, you'll need a friend and mentor to guide you along the way. Enter Professor Elazor Fig. I'm sure I mispronounced that.
I would say it's probably Alazor.
Alazar
Fig.
Yep. Whose investigations into rumors of a goblin rebellion have earned him an uneasy skepticism from the Ministry of Magic. So that's the basic plot, direct from PlayStation. That was verbatim from the PlayStation blog.
What a weird angle to go with.
It is a little odd.
Maybe, I mean, I'm sure this started long before, but one of the big discourse things right now is how the goblins are Jewish stereotypes with the greedy money thing, and they've got the big noses and all that. And it definitely is what they're leaning into. It's definitely, as Lindsay Ellis might say, it's not there.
Yeah.
And so now the story in this seems to be there's a goblin rebellion where they are seizing the banks and kidnapping children, which is very much along the lines of the weird, the very racist Protocols of Zion blood libel thing that comes up once in a while. Not the thing you want to be leaning into in the Harry Potter mythos right now.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
That is an either unfortunate coincidence or just the part of the mythos that really appealed to people. I do believe that this Goblin Rebellion they're talking about was mentioned in the lore before. I feel like that was a reference to something, and they're like, oh, let's focus on that. Just not great timing on that. And I believe I think you got a personal house elf slave assistant in this, which is also not a great look.
Yeah, I think you do actually.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. This game is good. I feel this game is funny because this game is probably the Harry Potter game that everybody's wanted since Harry Potter started.
Oh, absolutely.
But
yeah.
I think it might be too late.
Really?
I'm sure it'll sell well, but I think that a lot of adult Harry Potter fans are not comfortable supporting the brand anymore because of Rowling.
You really think it'll keep them from buying it?
I think it will impact. I don't know. I'm not saying it's gonna bomb, but I think it might cost them a couple million sales. I mean, it might sell 10 million instead of 15. You know what I mean?
And I would guess they're definitely counting on 15 from this.
I mean, you want this to really be a break. Also, the Harry Potter brand needs a win at this point.
Yeah.
Because the Fantastic Beasts movies are not doing it.
Yeah.
Even outside of the Rowling. I mean, I think Fantastic Beasts has been floundering even before all that because they're just not very good.
Yeah. I mean, that's the problem. It can't just be set in the Harry Potter universe.
No, you got to have something.
It has to be good.
Yeah, and look, this looks pretty good. I think at the very least, I mean, it's fun to see the Harry Potter stuff done in modern visuals because we haven't had a decent real Harry Potter game
4K,
in how long?
baby. Yeah.
Two
absolutely.
generations? Not since. I mean, were there Fantastic Beasts games?
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't think so. I mean, probably mobile crap.
Yeah, because
mobile, not real games, right?
Yeah, I don't think so.
The last one is probably like Chamber of or the last movie, like Deathly Hallows. The Gears of War game.
Back when EA had the license.
Yeah, EA had the license.
Yeah. This game does look pretty amazing, though. I'm not the world's biggest Harry Potter fan in the world, period.
No,
but even as only a tertiary fan, this game looks pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm curious about it. I'm definitely I would like to see what all this stuff adds up into, and part of the issue with Harry Potter is that it's even more so than a lot of other big popular fantasy and sci-fi worlds like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or Star Trek. Harry Potter more than most really falls apart after 3 minutes of thought.
Yeah,
it's very cobbled together without a lot of thought put together, and she would sort of bolt solutions. I was it Sean, the YouTube guy who I kind of tore apart the politics of the books in a video a couple weeks ago, made a very good point about how she has sort of a 2-book delay where she will respond to fan criticism of the world building and stuff by coming up with some other idea to fix it. And his example was when the 3rd book came out, everyone was like, well, wait, if they have necklaces that can time travel, why don't they just go back in time and stop Voldemort or World War II or what? And her solution to that was 2 books later, Neville accidentally knocks over a shelf that has all the time turners on it in the Ministry of Magic and breaks them all, so you can't time travel anymore.
Interesting.
You can almost hear when you describe it like that, you can almost hear her at the computer going all right, you little shits. I'll make you stop talking about the time turner.
Yep. But honestly, it really appears as if the game is going to give you the opportunity to just become your own Harry Potter. You're not named Harry Potter. You're named Shane Satterfield, but you're living the Harry Potter life. You can play Kidditch. You choose your house. The world in the game changes depending on the house that you're put into. Including
Why in the world
the
is Slytherin
architecture,
still around?
decor, the entrances, and stuff like that. You can leave the school grounds. You don't have to stay at the school. You can venture into the Forbidden Forest, into Hogsmeade Village, where you can interact with magical beasts or go shopping for supplies, where there's shops and things like that.
I mean, it definitely checks all the boxes.
Yeah. And once you leave, you'll be able to tame magical beasts. And I'm not sure exactly how that works as far as what you do with the beasts after you tame them. Do they fight alongside you? I don't know. I couldn't really tell from this footage, and they haven't really said a whole lot about it.
I imagine they don't directly do that. I mean, I would guess they're more used for environmental stuff, because it seems like you're really working hard to not kill anybody in this game. And I feel like sending like minotaurs after people is probably going to result in some bodily injury. I know you can heal broken bones and stuff with magic, but...
And then there's the Room of Requirement, which is a secret room which is within the Hogwarts Castle.
Which increasingly almost everyone who's ever gone to Hogwarts knows about.
Yeah.
It's also in the new Fantastic Beasts movie.
Yep. But it's supposed to be a secret base where you can craft like concoctions, practice magic and potions.
There's definitely an inner circle of Hogwarts students that pass this stuff down.
Yeah, and apparently that's also where you keep the magical beasts, but it still doesn't really say what you do with them. And then you can also use it to catch up with other students in terms of abilities and academics, stuff like that.
I mean, it looks like they're helping with the combo there, little creatures.
Oh, the creatures are. Okay,
yeah, like that.
So they are involved in
holding
combat.
up so it looks like it's a mandrake. So it's hold it up and then it screams and everybody gets stunned.
Okay, so it does look like they're
Stuff like
incorporating
that.
into combat then some.
Maybe they could be used as mounts.
That's true, because it is an open world game. You're going to need to be able to travel, although obviously you have the broom.
Well, maybe you don't get the broom till later and you got to ride.
That's possible.
Frankly, I'd rather ride a hippogriff than a broom.
That's for sure. Yep, a lot more fun. You'll be able to brew Wiggenweld potions for healing and use a mandrake seedling to incapacitate enemies with its cry, just as we saw in the B-roll. As you continue your studies at the school, you'll learn more recipes for potions, how to handle an assortment of magical plants. So that whole element of the IP is incorporated into the game as well. And then obviously the spells provide different ways to approach combat. You can go in Wands Blazing by accepting Accio to pull an enemy close before blasting them with Incendio. Or do you cast the Delusionment Charm to take a stealthier approach, finishing off enemies with a Silent Petrificus Totalist Takedown. It's like got its own vocabulary. It really does sound like it's just going to provide that Harry Potter life in an open world action RPG. Now the combat, to me, does look a little, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it flows.
I mean, that's true to the brand.
Yeah.
I mean, the combat in all that stuff doesn't really work.
The other part of it, too, is
it's
like...
accurate, though.
Yeah, like there was one scene in this where it shows like one of the magicians getting trampled by like a huge troll. Like, you should be dead. Mm-hmm. Like, the one thing about the Harry Potter movies is like they hardly ever get hurt, because if they get hurt, they die. Because they're just kids. Mm-hmm. They're not like these fantastical beasts that can sustain a lot of damage. So it'd be interesting to see how they handle that inside the game, or if they just completely ignore it. Which my guess is it'll probably be the latter.
I wonder if that's your microtransaction thing there.
What?
Well, it's like you're planting seeds and growing stuff in the garden, and it's saying like going to take 24 minutes or whatever. I'm like,
speed it up.
Speed it up.
Give me $1. Speed it up.
Give
me $1.
There's your slave.
Yep. Graphically, I think the game looks great.
Yeah, it looks nice.
Be
You know
nice
what my main takeaway from this is, like, I wish somebody would make a Jedi game like this that covers all this in the same level of detail. There you go. There's your
Someday,
Griffin.
Matt. Someday I think it'll happen.
Be nice.
I really thought Respawn might do that, but nope.
Well, Ubi's working on something.
Right. That'll probably be the first, is my guess. But we probably won't see that for another 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
My best guesstimate. But again, I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, but I'm pretty excited for this game. The release date is holidays of this year. They don't have a solid date for it yet. Do you think
Used to be, they were saying September.
Oh, really?
Now it's
just holidays. That's not encouraging. You think it's going to make it this year?
I don't know. From what I have heard, it has to make it this year by like decree of Warner Brothers. Like Warner Brothers has basically internally said Gotham Knights and Harry Potter have to come out this year, hell or high water. So you might see both of those games launch a little broken. Yeah, it sounds like these are going to come out whether they're done or not.
Coming in hot. You more excited for this game now that you've seen all this footage?
I'm not particularly excited about it. Like Harry Potter, I think, has really soured for me because of Rowling's bigotry and pathetic behavior. And and I was never a huge Harry Potter fan to begin with. I was 22 when the books started coming out.
Yeah, we weren't exactly in the right age group.
I think they're fun, like, kind of whimsical little, children's, young. I'm glad that got so many kids to read, and was a big deal for like parents to bond with kids and read the books together. Like, there's a lot of positive stuff that came out of Harry Potter. And I understand the appeal of it, especially if you were younger when they came out. But to me, like, I like the first 3 books a lot, and I think as she no longer had to answer to editors, they got bigger and more bloated and more nonsensical, and she clearly didn't know what she was doing in terms of like where she was planning for the series to go outside of that epilogue she wrote before she wrote everything else, which no longer really fit the rest of the book by the time she tacked it onto the final book. And I barely slogged through the last couple books, so. Not a huge fan. Didn't find the movies particularly amazing after the 3rd or 4th one. Never even saw the last one. I still haven't seen Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Really?
No, I just don't care.
I watched all the movies.
I like the Lego game.
I haven't read any of the books.
I like the Lego game.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah.
I like some of the games based on the movies. I thought the GBA games based on the first 2 movies are really good action RPG, like Zelda style action RPG and action adventures. The Chamber of Secrets actually is one of the better GBA games, I would say, in terms of non-Nintendo.
I don't remember it, actually.
It was like a top-down like action RPG. It's really good. I remember it being really good.
Andy T. Monahan is saying this game's coming to Switch. I don't know how that's going to be possible.
I mean, it's listed as Switch.
It is.
My guess is probably a cloud thing.
It has to be. There's no way this game will run natively.
Unless there's like another version that, looks completely different.
That's like a mobile version or something?
Yeah, like a potion making game or something.
Right. It's just like a little there's no way this game is running on Switch natively.
No, I mean, it'd have to be cloud. It'd have to be a cloud game.
Yeah. Dan Boy says he disagrees. He thinks the books have gotten better as they've gone.
Nah, I can't go with that. I think they're trying to get more complicated and darker as stuff gets older, because the kids are, theoretically the readers are growing up with the books. But I think the first 3 are pretty decent kind of whimsical childhood fantasy books in the vein of like Roald Dahl, although they're not quite so weird. And I think as she starts trying to tell like a more epic story, it just does not come together. And there's so much stuff which is just like, and for me, like, especially it lost me largely in the end of the 4th book where Cedric Diggory dies and everyone's all upset about it, and I'm like, who is this kid? Like, if you want to do this big turning point where this character dies and everybody's upset about it and it's horrible, that character has to be in the other books first. Like you had to kill Ron or something. Like all of a sudden he's just pops up and it's like, oh, everybody loves him so much. Oh no, he's dead. It's like, who gives a shit? Like in the movie though, I'll give credit to the actor. I can't remember the actor who plays his father. Who like his performance of like my boy is dead in that movie, like that sells it. Like that's a really good. I mean, it's a sad scene, but it's a really well acted scene. It almost gets it over the top. But like, no, I think she's a subpar to mediocre writer who came up with a bunch of accessible accessible ideas that really appeal to people, and came out at the exact right time that a generation that was growing up really needed a place to feel they belonged, and Hogwarts does that.
Game looks really ambitious.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the stuff that they're showing in these trailers and in that footage, like, the work that has gone into it.
Yeah, I gotta give EA credit on this one, where it's like, this is well beyond the scope they usually go for these things. Usually EA licensed stuff is like, you can feel them doing the bare minimum.
Yeah. Well, this isn't EA, though. This is WB.
Oh, it's a WB? Yeah. I always think Harry Potter stuff is EA.
Well, it used to be. Yeah, they had the license for forever.
Yeah.
But this is WB, but, like, anytime things are like blowing up and then like reforming, like all the stuff that we see in that's a lot of freaking work.
There's definitely ambition
Every
here.
one of those scenes, like a lot of
like
work.
I do appreciate that Warner Brothers, the WB, and it's Avalanche, right?
Yeah.
Like I appreciate that they pretty much seem to have sat down and said, "What's the Harry Potter game everybody wants to play?
Yeah,
let's just make that."
Yeah,
and I wish more companies did that when they got licenses for things.
It seems like a no-brainer, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Someone do that with Star Wars.
It's coming, I think.
Maybe.
I hope so. Okay, there you go. That's Hogwarts Legacy. Again, it's coming before the end of the year. We don't know.
Sometime this year.
Sometime this year.
I think you'll have it before Thanksgiving, one way or the other.
Yeah, and they're saying there's a Switch version, but...
Yeah, that has to be a cloud thing.
It has to be. There's no way it's running on Switch. So, all right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about the next Witcher game, which was announced yesterday, Matt. And CD Projekt Red made a point to say, it is not The Witcher 4. They went on Twitter after the announcement, and they're like, we just want to clarify, we did not just announce The Witcher 4. We have announced a new Witcher game.
Yeah.
And they said that it is going to start a new saga in the Witcher franchise.
Which we knew.
Does that mean that it could be without Geralt?
Definitely without. I mean, I think Geralt might be in it.
Really?
But, you're not going to play as Geralt. Definitely
You don't
not.
think?
100% no possible way.
How come?
Geralt's story is over, and they've said that since The Witcher 3.
But... Really?
Yeah, you will not play as Geralt in this game. I 100% guarantee you. I will bet you $1,000 cash.
Is that a good idea?
It's what they got to do. His story's over.
I mean, he could just start another story. They have a whole TV show about him.
Well, that's all a prequel.
It is, but
earlier.
why couldn't they just go? Maybe that's why it's not The Witcher 4. Maybe they're going to do a prequel for the game.
That would be another license. They'd have to relicense the book stuff to do that. I think there are licenses only for post-book stuff.
Oh, okay.
Also,
that's a wrinkle.
I think that's a poor choice. Also, the medallion that they showed in the one image they put, that's not a wolf medallion. Mm-hmm. That's a Lynx medallion.
Yeah.
It's a different character.
Wow.
Maybe, the original idea they had for The Witcher 1 was you'd create your own Witcher. And eventually they decided to just have you play Geralt. And
so maybe they're finally going to go back.
So I think that might be what's happening. It might be a prequel in the sense that it might be going back to because this is also what the board game that got kickstarted did, Witcher: The Old World. It jumped back to like hundreds of years earlier when in the heyday of the Witchers. Because what happened with the Witcher stuff is at one point, many hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years ago. I don't remember how long ago it was before the Witcher events, but it was called I think I can't remember the exact name of it. It's like the alignment of the spheres, where basically planets aligned and a portal was ripped open and magic weird stuff poured into reality.
Okay.
And that's where like all the monsters and elves and magic and all that stuff came from. And monsters basically overran the world for a while, and the Witchers were created. The Witchers sort of developed as a method of fighting them. And by the time you get around to Geralt, Witchers are on the way out because monsters are basically kind of controlled. And people don't see the need for Witchers, and they think they're weird, and they don't like them because they're mutants, and but there was a time when Witchers were sort of heroes, and they were common, and they were like wandering hero warriors, and they would work was everywhere, and everywhere you went, people would pay you to get rid of monsters because they were everywhere and all that stuff. And that's what the Old World board game is focusing on, which is why there's explaining basically why a bunch of people can play different Witchers, because usually there are not enough Witchers around to ever even meet each other. Mm-hmm. So they might be going back to a time when Witchers were more plentiful and there were more schools to choose from. So you can have the Lynx school is not one of the schools that's around that we know of in the time of Geralt. So it might be a prequel in the golden age of Witchers, where it could be easier to justify creating your own Witcher character and having, or they could be going beyond the Witcher 3 time period and have like the Lynx could be a new school that's been founded because the Witchers are needed again or something like that. So it could be like a new Jedi Order kind of thing.
Okay.
Those would be my two guesses. I would think it would be the latter, partly because it means you can use Ciri.
Right.
And Ciri can kind of continue through this.
Mm-hmm.
Although to be fair, Ciri could technically also show up in a prequel because she can travel through time and space.
Right.
And she can port through different dimensions and stuff.
Yeah.
So you're not really limited on that, whatever you want to do. But I mean, I would probably be smart, given the success of the games, to do a sequel that isn't 4 because it's not Geralt, but you're creating your own. But you're also involving Ciri somehow to show how that turned out, and through that you'd find out what happened to Geralt and all that.
Makes sense. The other wrinkle to this announcement is that CD Projekt Red is finally ditching the Red Engine, and it is going to work.
That's called learning your lesson from Cyberpunk.
The hard way, yes. But it is going to work with Epic Games on the next Witcher game in concert to help Unreal Engine develop. I guess the best way to describe it would be some sort of a developmental template for open world games. So not only
which is not something that Unreal's tremendously good at.
It's not. But
they're clearly trying with that Matrix demo.
Yep, it's a symbiotic relationship that's going to help both sides, and not just help both sides, but help everybody else who makes open world games on Unreal Engine from here on out.
Yeah.
If I were CD Projekt Red, how would you feel about that? You're basically helping your competitors make games.
I mean, after Cyberpunk, I'll take whatever I can get.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And if this thing ends up looking anything close to that Matrix demo, damn.
Lord have mercy.
Some people were noting, like, what if GTA 6 looks like that?
Right. I mean, it probably should.
I mean, look what they did with Red Dead Redemption 2 on the last gen.
I know.
Look, I mean, GTA 5 is a PS3 game.
I know, and it looks pretty damn
good.
Looks pretty good on PS5.
Even without the upgrades to the new stuff. Like, so I don't know. Like, yeah, I'm pretty interested. I mean, I think we're gonna be deciding whether to buy this or Elder Scrolls 6 around the same time.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Actually,
it's a win-win though for everybody.
Yeah, I think this will probably beat Elder Scrolls 6.
You think?
To market.
Because it's not working on the stupid Red Engine anymore. Yeah. They even mentioned in their quote, whenever they issued the press release, like, our last 2 games have been a nightmare because we've been trying to adapt the Red Engine to do things that it was never designed to do.
It has always felt like, just even from their comments on things, even when they'd be positive about it, it always felt like the Red Engine was one of the big pipeline problems.
Yeah, I don't know why they waited so long to do this. But
I mean, I understand. There was that period where everybody wanted to have their own in-house engine.
Because they were thinking that they could then license it out to other companies.
Yeah, this becomes a big deal and everybody else wants to use it.
And it never happened for anyone.
See also Frostbite 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's on and on. Like, the only engines that have ended up working are Unity. By the way, did you see Unity's new demo from yesterday from GDC? No. Mind-blowing. Like, as far as, like, human hair, skin...
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you're looking at Unreal and Unity and Resident Evil engine. Pretty good. Like, Capcom seems to be sticking with that.
But it makes all the games look kind of the same, I feel like.
Yeah, that's a renderer choice. Like, they could change that if they wanted, I think. But, again, it's sort of like if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. And whatever I can't remember what the Assassin's Creed games run on now. Like, what was that? Snowdrop?
Snowdrop. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and they still, I think, do. Which
they
should probably ditch that engine, too.
Well, it probably needs to be revamped or something.
But to me, Matt, this is great news. To me, it means that we're not going to have to wait, like, 8 years to get a CD Projekt Red game like we've been waiting. Like, they should be able to, now that they're working with outside partners and everybody else who's contributing to Unreal Engine 5, they should be able to get games out a lot more quickly than they used to. And they should be a lot less buggy than they have been in the past. And if they can get it to a point where everybody who's making open world games on Unreal Engine 5 has these libraries to work from that gets them over the hump, and they can just focus on the art of making games instead of the nuts and bolts and the technicality of making games, then everybody wins. So this is great. Like, this is great on both sides. It was smart of Epic to bring in a partner to help them work on it, because if you know you're going to make the game on Unreal Engine, you know you're going to make the next Witcher on Unreal Engine, you know already The Witcher is one of the best-selling open-world games ever, it's a no-brainer. And it helps both sides. It helps sides that aren't even a part of the agreement. So I think it's a great thing. I think it's going to make all open-world games on Unreal Engine better in the future, and hopefully cut down on development time for all of them as well. So I think it's a great call. When do you think we'll ever see anything about the next Witcher game? Next E3?
2 years.
Yeah. See a teaser trailer or something here in like 18 months, 2 years, something like that, my guess. Because they're just getting started now. Because they finally just got past Cyberpunk 2077.
Mm-hmm.
Now that the next gen versions are out there,
It's a real interesting time to make that announcement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they worked through some tough times. I mean,
little something.
They really screwed up so bad.
Little something to throw in right after you've done the next gen update for Cyberpunk and before the fiscal year ends, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And the Witcher 3 next gen update's supposed to be coming in Q2.
That's right.
So.
Yep. So, and then after that, it'll just be the next Witcher game. Should be full steam ahead on that because I think they already killed the multiplayer for Cyberpunk, and
I haven't heard anything about continuing that.
Yeah. So they'll finally be able to turn the page.
Nothing of value was lost. I don't think.
Yeah, I think at this point, I think most consumers are probably also willing to turn the page.
They did say something about DLC for Cyberpunk, though.
Yeah, there was still some words kind of out there about it. So we'll see if it actually comes to fruition. But I think most people, myself included, who are really salty over the launch of Cyberpunk, like I feel like CD Projekt Red has done about as much as it could to fix that.
Yeah, it's. Yeah.
Still, I don't forgive them for what
it's
happened,
a little too late, and it was a little too blatant.
Yeah.
And I think it's harder to sort of change viewpoint on it than it was for like No Man's Sky, just because No Man's Sky was trying to do something so different and so unusual, and then they kind of did make good on all that and beyond. Whereas Cyberpunk, still, I expected better from them just in terms of game design, let alone ignore optimization and visuals and all that stuff that they worked on, the bugs and all that. I don't think Cyberpunk is a very interesting game design example, especially in comparison to Witcher 3.
I actually really enjoyed Cyberpunk 2077, despite even all the bugs and the problems with it. I plowed through that game. Like I played it.
I did go back to it when the update came out, and it is better. It definitely looks better. It's a world of difference on the Xbox Series X anyway. And I didn't remember anything I was doing, but there's a lot of added things, like reasons to do the side stuff because like that gets you stuff with the different contacts and everything. But I played it for a while because that was what I played until Horizon came out, and it was still just the same thing over. It's just like run in, slow-mo hits, cut people's heads off, pick stuff up, go back. Like there's just no. I mean, Witcher 3 had everything you did had like some kind of narrative backbone to it, and it's just not there in Cyberpunk. It doesn't feel like a world where stories are happening. It does feel like a world where people live. Like it does feel like it is the best city in a game I've ever seen. I think I just walk around that city and watch. Nothing super unique happens, but it's like there's something about.
But you go
that
in a little back alley, and there's stuff happening back there.
Or
like,
I get connect,
back there,
or
like,
connects up in
a
way that like it makes sense how like that alley would form as the city grew up around it. Like there's a logic to Night City somehow that is
city planning. I mean, that's really what it is.
I mean, not like, but like that haphazard sort of like, that's good enough sort of thing. That like it has a character to it that works. That a lot of video game cities just don't. Even video game cities based on real cities.
Yeah, like Ghostwire Tokyo.
Yeah,
perfect example.
So yeah, I appreciate that, but I just in comparison to sort of just the way that the world of The Witcher just sort of kept my attention and kept me interested and kept me looking at everything. Cyberpunk just does not have that. And part of it is because I don't feel any kind of uniqueness to the side stuff I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I know CD Projekt is better than that.
That's for sure. Rosencrantz is asking, is Unreal Engine 5 the true next-gen experience? Is it going to be? Do you think it's going to
sure seems like
be
it.
The winner?
Judging by that demo they showed in the caves and the Matrix thing, like, yeah, that's... I mean, it's not going to look as good as the Matrix thing because you're going to have a lot more systems running under it, but, like, that's amazing. Like, I showed some people that Matrix demo, and they didn't know that they were playing until they, like, I'm like, hit the button. Like, and they're like, this is the game? I'm like, yeah, that's the game. Yeah. That's what it looks like now.
A lot of people in the chat are saying that they also really like Cyberpunk. Some of them waited.
I definitely don't dislike Cyberpunk. I just think it is a step down from The Witcher 3 in terms of a game design thing. And maybe that was inevitable given like the scope they were going for and the time they ran out of. Because it really didn't have as long as we feel like it had. It was, it was 4 years of development, really. Yeah. I guess 5 if you want to count the year they spent.
The year that they spent
everything.
After it released.
Yeah. But we think about it as like, because it was announced in 2012 that it was like, they took 10 years. So there's like, well, no, they didn't start until like 2016. Yeah. So like, I don't know. I don't find it as compelling as The Witcher was. Witcher 3 was.
They're so different, though.
Yeah, but in narrative design, they are not.
Yeah.
Different. Like they could have done better with that.
Yeah.
It could. Every group I fight doesn't have to be the same generic group of gang members who have no back anything and no personality and there's no uniqueness to it. Even different hunts for the same type of monster in The Witcher 3 had more personality to them than those side things
I'd agree with that.
in Cyberpunk.
I'd agree.
And I just think I do think Cyberpunk's probably better than The Witcher 1 and 2. But like I don't know if I'll go back and finish it.
One's high fantasy, one's cyberpunk.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that, I think for most people, whether they like one more than the other, probably a big part of that is which setting they like more.
Well, sort of. I mean, cyberpunk I have trouble describing as cyberpunk. I would more describe it as noir.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Like I would definitely play. They would never do it. But I would definitely play a CD Projekt like straight up noir game. Like a 1940s LA noir game made by them. That would
like
be
a gumshoe detective type thing.
Like that kind of like a double indemnity kind of thing.
Okay.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
I would like to see them branch out. I just don't think Cyberpunk turned out to. They'll never touch that again. I can't imagine.
I don't think so. I think they're one and done on that one. Yep. Okay, we got to move on. We're going to talk next about a cool little game that, unfortunately, because I have been playing Final Fantasy Origin and Ghostwire Tokyo, I did not have a ton of time to play, but Matt, I think you spent more time with it, and that is a little game called Tunic. Mm-hmm. It is on Game Pass right now, and it is a Xbox and PC exclusive.
Yeah, it's Microsoft's involved somehow there.
Which, as we were saying earlier with Ghostwire, which means probably in a year it'll come to PlayStation with, if there's any DLC, it'll have it added in with the base product or whatever. But for right now, it is an Xbox and PC exclusive, and you can play it for free on Game Pass. It is kind of a top-down, old-school Zelda-like. At least it looks that way.
Mm-hmm. It is.
When you start playing it, though, and I only played probably 2 hours of this, I'm guessing, it's hard.
Yeah, it's old-school Nintendo hard.
Yeah. Like, I refer to it as kind of like a Souls-like in the lower third, but really, you're right. It's just like an old Zelda game.
Yeah, you get no real help early on unless you're it's
Yeah, for instance, I stand on that thing and I'm like, okay, I was waiting for something to activate.
No, it doesn't do anything.
It doesn't do anything.
So yeah, this is it's very Zelda inspired to the point that early on you're looking for a sword, but part of the gimmick here is that you can't read a lot of stuff until you find stuff that translates things later. Mm-hmm. And one of the main things you're finding are pages to an instruction manual for the game,
right?
Which is patterned after the old NES manuals, or actually the old Japanese Famicom manuals, more.
Yeah.
With like the same design they had in Japan and all that kind of like look, and like they would include like all this amazing art and like maps of things and like hints to things and little like like rundowns of all the various enemies and sort of that. And they were kind of key to like you see there, like you don't know that says stick,
right?
Because you don't know how to read that yet. And there's a lot of stuff you pick up that you don't know what it does until you use it, and then it'll kind of fill that in for you. And as you maybe you don't know where to go, but like some of the manual pages you pick up will tell you where to go or give you a hint, like this is on page whatever, but you don't have page whatever yet, so you got to find page whatever to have that thing. And so there's a mix of both, like trying to figure out like where would you probably logically need to go next, and some of that's early on there's like a lot of signs that like point towards where a sword icon is, and you're like, okay, I want a sword, so I'm definitely going to keep following the sword signs, because the stick sucks.
The level design is complicated.
It is.
It's like Dark Souls. It all folds in on itself.
And there's like shortcuts to later areas that are always there, but you'd never know they're there until you take them back to where
right. No, you're right.
They come out from the back of something, and you would never have known you could walk behind it, but you always could have done that.
Yeah, and you just didn't see it.
Yeah, there was no way to see it.
A lot of it is the isometric perspective. Yeah. It intentionally hides things sometimes, or it just obscures them to the point where you just basically gloss over them and don't pay attention.
There's a lot of discovery here. And whether you find that annoying or fascinating is sort of up to you.
You also see you cannot jump, you cannot roll off of cliffs.
Yeah, classic Zelda stuff. You can't jump over things or fall off cliffs.
You can die very easily, as I did right there.
Yeah, you die pretty fast if you're not careful. You do lose 20 gold.
Yeah.
Every time you die, you go pick it up Dark Souls style.
Well, you could lose it all if you don't go get it.
Yeah, well, it's only 20.
Wait, there's only 20 left where you die?
You only drop a little bit of gold.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You drop about the same amount that you get from like killing 3 of the pig enemies.
Oh, okay.
It's not a big penalty.
That's good.
And so you basically go around and the goal. There's no real dialogue, and the goal is to basically find items and upgrade the character if you can figure out how to upgrade the character, and find new items that will let you get through the more difficult stuff, because you'll definitely run into things where you're like, okay, I definitely need a shield. Mm-hmm. And so your goal becomes to find a shield. So you have to go through and figure out where you can go, what your items you have right now allow you to get to, and sort of work your way through there. And then as you pick more pages up, they'll give you hints to where you need to go. You will find a map page that it took me a while to realize actually does track you in real time. If you open that map, it'll show a little marker where you are, which I didn't realize until like an hour later, which is helpful. And it is sort of a thing where like it can be frustrating to not understand where you need to go, but once you figure it out, it all opens up and it's very satisfying.
Yeah, the levels start folding in on themselves.
Yeah.
And you'll find yourself back to some place you were before and not really realize how the hell you got there. At least I did.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, how did I end up back almost to the beginning of the level
elements
again?
where you're just like, it's like, okay, and you follow this path, it's like, you're like, wait, I know where this place is. You mean I could have always gone down here?
Yeah, yeah. That's for sure. The combat's pretty simple. Like, you lock on, as you can see, with the left trigger. And you can assign... One thing I do like is how you can assign whatever buttons you want.
Yeah.
To whatever ability you want. I obviously chose X for attack, because it feels most natural to me. Yeah. But it is a lot of kind of fumbling around and like discovering what the game wants you to do, what you can and can't do, things that you can or can't like run through or run over.
And there's a lot of stuff where you're like, okay, clearly I'm supposed to be able to do something with this, but I don't know how to do it yet. I do like that when you pick up your soul, it like does a burst that stuns everybody.
Yeah. That's clever.
You can see down there that burst broke the sign, and the signs do repair when you
really?
when you
I didn't
rest.
notice that actually.
You see, like you can't read that sign anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So if you've never been somewhere before and you actually destroy the sign, you're
funny.
like, crap, that was kind of important. Like because knowing like what things are sometimes they give you hints as to what's in what direction.
But that's the way this game is. Like stuff happens that you don't even notice. Like there's just lots of cool little details. Meanwhile, it intentionally leaves out a lot of details that you might want to have.
Yeah, you're constantly trying to piece clues together, and even on this, it's like at some point you realize like, oh, I can sacrifice something, and like it'll do that, and you're like, oh, that's how I level up my strength and my defense and my and all that, and that's cool. And there's like you'll get little hints like in the manual you pick up. There's like a little thing like you can't read any of it, but it shows a picture of like this very obviously boss looking dude, and it's got a thing big number 3 in a box next to it, and like. You're like, okay, so clearly my stat should be at level 3 before I try to fight this thing. And sure enough, that is very true. That was a tough fight to some degree. Like it was a lot of old school memorization. Like you're not going to power your way through this. Like you can't Dark Souls cheese.
No, this game is hard, man. I died a bunch playing this game. Like sometimes you get like way far away from like your last save point or whatever, and like there's a bunch of times I didn't even bother trying to go back and get like what I dropped when I died. Because sometimes I couldn't even remember how I got there because it had been so far in between the save points. But then other times it's like you drop down like the right place and there's a save point.
Yeah.
And
or you knock this bridge down. You're like, oh, this is where that other save point was.
Right.
Like that save point you just picked up there. Like that's the central save point for like 5 different areas.
Yeah.
If you double back the right way. And like that's pretty. Like it's pretty cool. Like it's done really well.
It's a cool game in general, I feel like. But I started playing it and I realized that it's like this isn't a game that you can just like cruise through.
No,
you have to think about it. You have to approach each encounter with caution.
Yeah.
You have to be intelligent about how you do it.
You got to keep everything in mind. You got to remember it.
Yeah, and I was just like, you know what? Like I'm already
here. You'll see one of the pages.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm just trying to like get through Elden Ring with the help of a bunch of other.
So that right there does give you a checklist for like all the early things you need to do. And sure enough, I didn't fully realize that until I until I looked at it later. I'm like, oh, I did all those things because I was like, well, now what do I do? Because I rang the first bell and I'm like, I didn't know what else to do. And I looked at the thing. I was like, okay, you want me to do that? I guess I got to work my way west. All right.
Yeah.
So,
but it's tough going, man. Like. If you get attacked by like 3 or 4 like tough enemies, it's hard to not die, man.
Although I mean, you do have like a Dark Souls style iframe roll.
Yeah.
Which stops working if your health is low enough. You don't have the iframes anymore.
Really?
If your health is down in the red.
Are you kidding me?
No, it changes.
It should be the opposite.
It punishes you for getting hit.
What? That seems insane. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, that's in one of the manual things too.
Really?
It shows you like when you get invincible frames, and like the advantages you have when your health is higher and the disadvantages you have when it's lower, and when your stamina is low. That's the stamina thing is interesting. Like the stamina will run out and is in the red, but it doesn't stop you from dodging. But it does make the dodging less invincible. So it's in your best interest to get some distance and let it heal up to green. But to do that, you have to basically stop doing everything, including blocking. So you got to be in a safe place, which is easier said than done in a boss battle.
Oh, I got to the point in this game where I got very scared. Like I come to a new screen and I'd see like 3 or 4 of the more tough enemies that actually have weapons or whatever, and I'd just run away because it's like managing it. The other problem too that I had with this game was the isometric angle. Sometimes like you get in these really tight quarters and you're fighting maybe some of the tougher enemies and you're trying to get away, and I would get stuck on stuff a lot because a lot of this stuff, like, it looks like you should be able to run through it, but you can't. Other things are the opposite. Like those squares, like it looks like, maybe could be able to, but there's no jumping in the game.
Yeah, once you get the sword, you can just cut those down. And to the game's credit, everything you cut down stays cut.
Like forever?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So it remembers everything.
Does not reset when you rest at a shrine or whatever.
Yeah, and you get like health replenishers, these little like vials or whatever that you
you get Estus flasks basically, and you can upgrade those, and you find pieces of those to get another one, like very Zelda.
Yeah, like here you had to find that piece of paper just to learn the control scheme.
Yep.
They don't tell you anything. You start the game, you have no idea how anything works. And to its credit, it does organically just kind of show you how to do most of the stuff and teach you how to do it. Like, and it doesn't need much instruction.
Yeah, like as long as you've played a Zelda game before, you're gonna probably be fine with the basics.
Are you going to continue to play this game, do you think, Matt? Yeah?
I feel like if I don't keep playing it, I'm never going to be able to figure out what I'm doing again.
Yeah, because you have to be able to remember like where everything is, and on the fly. This is where the game took a turn for me. I was like,
this gets a lot harder here because like this is like where you're like, and then you get the sword, and the key is that the sword can interrupt these guys.
Oh.
So like,
and the stick does not.
No, the stick just like does damage, but it doesn't like help you. Like, but the sword, like the second hit of the sword combo can stop them from attacking. And then once you get the shield, the game changes completely.
Yeah, I would imagine. Are there parries like tied to the shield and stuff?
There are parries. It's very hard to land, and the timing is very strange. But like you can stop anything, and it's like you can stop full on like power attacks from bosses with the parry, and stun them and get tons of free hits on them. From that.
All right. I don't know if I will go back to this. I think as long as I'm still doing the Shane versus Elden Ring stream on Saturdays, I think
enough.
It's enough, dude. Like I don't think I'm gonna go back to this. I gave it a couple hours. I found it to be pretty frustrating. I never did get the sword. How did I miss that?
You're right in the right area.
I never got it. That might have changed everything for me.
It's around here.
But again, because it's so obtuse in what it tells you and where stuff is.
You should definitely have the sword before you're in here.
I should have the sword already?
Yeah, it's further past this stuff.
Oh. Well, as you can see, I got in way over my head. And see, then I get trapped in the corner. That's the other thing, too. It's hard to tell, like, when you're in some of these rooms, how they're kind of cut out of the world, where you can escape.
Yeah, like, if you look at that sign, like, you'll see, it's not in language you can understand, but it will have a sword icon pointing you that direction.
Really?
It's over here. It's over here somewhere. I can't remember exactly where.
I mean, I did mostly enjoy it. It is a very charming game. I like the art style. I like the angle that it plays from.
Yeah, you can't fight these guys without the sword.
They whoop my ass.
Yeah, you're supposed to basically learn like don't even try it.
I tried, but eventually I try to run away and I get caught on geometry and they kill me. And this happened to me a lot because I never found the sword. I'm guessing the sword would have helped a lot.
The sword kills those guys in 3 hits.
No.
So yeah, and the second hit stuns them. So so it's a big change.
Makes a big difference. So. I would recommend this probably. If you have Game Pass, just download it. It's a very small download. You can give it a go and see if it's for you. I would say if you're like me and you are playing Elden Ring right now, it may be a little bit too much of a good thing. I don't know. Too much of a difficult thing at one time. Once I kind of figured out what this game was about and how it worked, I was like, I can't do this. So I just, I was like, I'll put this on the back burner. As it turned out, you had played it and spent more time with it than me, and I was like, okay, we're good.
Yeah, I mean, I find it very charming.
It is very charming.
It's very good.
Yeah. And for what they're doing and what they're making, it's pretty great.
Yeah. Like, this is the classic Zelda experience that I wish it was easier to get from Nintendo, frankly.
Yeah. I'm surprised Nintendo hasn't done more like this with Zelda.
Yeah, like this is,
And now that it doesn't have a handheld anymore, who knows when we'll get more games like this, as far as like a dedicated handheld. Because everybody plays stuff on the TV screen now, so who knows if we'll get more games like this in the Zelda line going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the Link's Awakening remake is about the limit there.
Vincent says in chat, this is the best game I've played in years. Wow.
I wouldn't go that far, but it is.
This is some big words,
if
man.
If this is the kind of thing that you're after, I would say that very few have done it better.
Yeah.
And it's kind of got this like, figure it out yourself without being too obtuse. Like that's a very hard balance to strike, and I think it does strike it. Like I never felt like I had no idea what to do next. I always managed to communicate to me what I need. I was like, okay, I need a sword. Clearly. Okay, the sword's
cool.
cool.
What I've been doing here, I just keep banging my head against the same wall.
You gotta stop doing that. You gotta go the other direction, because the sword is past that.
Yeah.
Clearly I need a sword, and I have a sword. It would be really great if I had a shield, because now they're starting to shoot things at me.
Well, I just wanted to kill these guys. I was like, okay, this is a challenge now.
So
I'm going to kill you guys.
So I found
found
a shield, did that, and then you're like, okay, cool. And I go, where else? The only place.
And how disappointing was it for me that I fight for that chest, and all I get were 15 freaking gold for the chest? I was like so mad.
And then you're like, okay, go on the shield. Okay, now the only place left to go is too dark to see, so I probably need a lantern or something. Where do I find that? That's that kind of progression.
Yeah.
And it all flows really well, and that is a very difficult thing to do, especially coming off of like something like Nobody Saves the World, which was also good, but like was not elegant enough to pull off the trick this one's doing. Also, when you get the sword, you can cut all that stuff down, so like you're not trapped. You're not trapped or
stuck
limited
on it.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I never did find it.
Yeah.
So that was the end of my Tunic journey, essentially. I did enjoy it for the most part, the little bit of time that I played it, but I just had so many other things.
That is weird that it's resurrecting you there.
No. This is
that's a
trailer for the game. Yeah, it's different.
I was gonna say you should be resurrecting at the last shrine.
What'd you say?
You should be popping up at the last shrine.
Yeah. Well, I had a save point there where I kept respawning from, but yeah, that's Tunic. How much does it cost if you pay for it? Do you know?
I don't know. I think it's $25.
Really? That sounds about right.
Yeah. I mean, I would be completely happy if I'd paid for this.
I just don't know why people would ever pay $25 for a game like this instead of just spending $13 and getting Game Pass for the month.
I don't know.
When you could play this and everything else that's on there.
I mean, I would consider paying for this just to reward the developers.
Oh, gotcha.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's $30. Maybe it's $25, like on sale the first week. I can't remember.
I could see that. I could also see this game becoming very frustrating eventually. Just watching this trailer from the later parts of the game.
Well, once you have the sword and shield and other items, like you have much more capability. So, like the firecrackers can kill stuff. Like like there's a guy with a big shield and a spear, and like he can one shot you. Like even if you upgraded your health a fair amount, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? So I threw a firecracker and he just killed him.
Huh.
I was like, okay, that solves that problem.
Game also gives me a little bit of like a Journey vibe.
Yeah, there's a little
art style,
like the smoothness of the characters says that to it.
Yeah. So there you go. That's Tunic. It's available for Xbox and PC. But as we always say, just spend $13 a month and get Game Pass and play this and the dozens or hundreds actually of other games that are just sitting there on the service waiting to play. Seems like people get testy when we tell people to get Game Pass. It's like it's this thing that PlayStation fans get very upset about. I don't know why, because I guess they don't have anything to compete with it yet. Hopefully that's changing in the near future. At least it seems like it's going to, but we'll see. But there's Tunic. I'd give it a thumbs up, even in my limited play time. I just didn't have a lot of time to really spend with it, and I was in kind of a rush to get footage for the show.
Yeah,
so
I give it a big thumbs up.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
Okay. All right, it's time to move to our last topic of today's episode. Also some news that broke yesterday. Some big news. PlayStation is buying Haven Studios. You may say, what's Haven Studios? Haven Studios is the brand new studio that Jade Raymond launched literally a year almost to the day. It was announced, I believe, on like March 16th of last year. And here we are, March, 22nd today, 23rd? Yep. It's almost a year to the day after Jade Raymond launched her new studio. And along the way, she's made a couple hires. She hired like a couple guys that had worked on Assassin's Creed. It seems like she's done a pretty good job with her hires, getting people in who are really talented. And a year later, PlayStation has purchased Haven Studios. Congratulations, Jade. If only for the fact that she is undoubtedly finally going to be able to finish a video game, which she has not been able to do in probably 10 years.
About that. I think the last one was probably I Am Alive.
Yeah, because she went to EA.
Yeah, and they shut all that stuff down.
Her stuff down there. She goes to Google and works on Stadia. They shut down
that down.
all the first-party development there. Finally, she's like, you know what? Screw it.
Make my own studio.
And it worked.
And then Jade gonna get paid,
she is getting paid. And she deserves it.
Yeah, good.
I mean, that's not...
And that probably means she's going to finally get something out the door.
Right, most importantly. Because let's be honest, she was getting paid at those other jobs.
Oh, sure.
Too. Lots.
But now I think she's good.
Right, yeah.
If she wasn't already.
For life. Yeah. She's set now.
She
has her studio, and she's going to be able to keep making games. Now,
and I do think that this is part of like an arms race anyway. Like, like Sony's buying up developers the same way Microsoft is, because they see the writing on the wall in terms of where the war's going, basically.
Yeah, because this is way out of the ordinary for PlayStation.
Yeah, usually you have to prove yourself with at least 2 games to get Sony to even look interested at you.
Right before they even start sniffing around.
Ask Bluepoint about that.
Yeah. I mean, Bluepoint made how many projects?
People have been saying Sony should buy Bluepoint for almost 10 years.
Yeah. And then they finally did it after the Demon's Souls remake, which, okay.
Sure, yeah. But
well, they did a really great job on it, but you should have done it a long time ago.
Imagine if if Microsoft had beat them to that.
Yeah. Think about Naughty Dog. How many games did Insomniac make as a second-party studio before they were finally purchased by PlayStation?
Yeah, although some of that I think was Ted's choice.
He just didn't want to sell.
He wanted to be independent.
That's possible.
For a long time.
There's Naughty Dog. How many Jak and Daxter games did they make before they were finally bought by? And here's Haven.
They had to grow at least 3 soul patches for Jak before that would happen.
Yeah, and here's Haven, which has never made a single game, has only existed for a year. For all intents and purposes, Matt, Haven right now is Jade Raymond, a logo, and maybe some little prototype.
Well, whatever they have, clearly Sony likes what they see.
Herman Hulst, yesterday in an interview with Games Industry, gushed over whatever it is that Haven is making. He gushed over Haven, saying that Haven has managed to do things in such a short period of time that most development studios take far longer to do. He is just in love with Haven Studios. And I think we got a hint not long ago about what they're working on. Isn't it kind of like a game as a service about like inclusion?
I don't know. I didn't see that.
That's what I remembered.
Switch the lower third.
Oh, that's what I remembered, was that it's like a game as a service that's all about like inclusion and incorporating people into other
I guess that
things.
sounds familiar. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember clearly.
Whatever it is, Herman Hulst is really enamored with it, because this is crazy, Matt, that they...
It's home too.
Okay, I mean, it could be.
Yeah.
It could be something like that. Like, I'm like, what if it's like...
I mean, the last time you let Jade Raymond loose, she made Assassin's Creed. Right. Which changed the industry.
It did. It absolutely did.
So,
but I'm also wondering, could this be like Dreams or a Little Big Planet game where you hear the idea and you're like, oh my God, that's brilliant. That's genius. And then the game comes out and the game is actually really good and it does what the developer said it was going to do, and nobody cares and no one buys it. It's a risk to buy a studio based upon like an idea and a couple people that are on staff at that point. Like, and a risk that PlayStation was never willing to take until now. The game has changed, Matt. Microsoft has completely changed the game and flipped the script. PlayStation's now in scramble mode. That's what this says to me. It's that PlayStation has reached a new level of desperation that it's never been at before in order for it to rationalize making such a risky move. While at the same time, I would add, they're getting a deal on the studio. So if you like the idea and you really think it's going to be something that's going to be huge,
it's really something you don't want Microsoft to have.
it does make sense that you buy it now before the game comes out and it's a hit, and the price of the studio suddenly quadruples because they have this IP or this idea. Now, a caveat to this is that essentially PlayStation funded the launch of the studio because this game all along was slated to be a PlayStation exclusive, and PlayStation invested in the development of the game. So it kind of owned the studio already, because without PlayStation's money, Jade doesn't have the money to hire these people from Ubisoft that worked on Assassin's Creed. Although she might be that wealthy where she could have maybe started something a little smaller.
The investment might have been there. Also, like, I know some people who worked with her at UB back in the day and stuff, and almost every single one of them said they would work for her again in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah.
Like, I have never heard anyone say anything bad about working with her.
I've never heard anyone say
anything. And believe me, those people have said plenty of bad things about other people they've worked with to me, without any reservation. It's not like they're whitewashing their experiences. Everybody speaks very highly of her.
I've never heard anyone say a bad thing about her other than trolls on the internet.
Other than toxic
incel trolls on the internet. And look, I've been around her so many times for extended periods of time, and she's been nothing but amazing
she's great.
Me and my teams and the people who have worked for me. Yeah, I mean, just in general.
Once you get past the very understandable, are you going to be a horrible asshole to me,
right.
defense shields,
she's
a really lovely person.
Could totally understand why she would have
that
absolutely.
Shield. Like,
because she
should not give anyone the benefit of the doubt ever again, as far as
it could be argued that she was really the first developer who had to deal with, like, the whole incel.
I mean, that was definitely like one of the big eye-opening situations of that.
For me,
it was like, oh wow. I mean, obviously we saw that all the time. Like, Morgan would get creepy emails and stuff like that, but just how brazen it was with Jade.
What really hit me, Matt, the first time that really opened my eyes was when someone had drawn a comic of her where they had literally spent days and days drawing the comic, and it was the most disgusting thing.
That was VG Cats.
What?
I remember that.
No.
The thing where she was like, like basically turned into porn?
Yes.
Yeah, that was VG Cats.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I remember that.
Wow. I thought that was just some random dude.
No, that was if it's the one I'm thinking of.
It was awful.
Yeah.
Wow. That's an eye opener all on its own. Oh man.
I'll check that.
But that was when it all hit home for me, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is what she's dealing with. This is the type of crap." And now it's just spiraled ever since. So I root for Jade. She had to deal with this crap way before a lot of other women had to deal with it in the industry, and she stood tall, and she hasn't left. And that takes guts to stand up to the internet. Really, I think anyone who puts their face on the internet knows what you're dealing with here, but not what she's dealing with. It was a whole different level of it. So I'm very happy for her. Do you think it's going to be a good deal for PlayStation? I do.
I think so. I wouldn't be... I mean, look, I don't... It's hard to say in some ways because, like, it's been so long since she got a game out.
Yeah.
Not through any fault of her own.
Yeah.
But look, Sony has limited resources. In comparison to Microsoft, and if they're snapping Haven up, it means they see something that they think is very, very worth it. And is Sony always right about that stuff? No, but like her track record and their need to and Sony's need to parcel its resources out more carefully than Microsoft indicates to me that they see something really worthwhile here. Which, to be honest, does not surprise me.
I do trust PlayStation's judgment. I mean, look at the games that comes out of their first-party studios. They can spot a good game when they see it. Although there have been missteps, like they probably stuck with Little Big Planet a little too long. Mm-hmm. I hate to say it because I have a really good friend who works on the game, but Dreams probably wasn't the smartest investment. But I do feel like PlayStation almost has like a slush fund that it uses just to develop crazy ideas. And I like that about it. I mean, I like that Ghostwire Tokyo is kind of crazy, and it probably gave Bethesda some money for that to make it exclusive to PlayStation. I like that Sony does that, and I hope that never goes away. I hope that remains a component of Sony's first-party offerings. And honestly, if I had to bet on somebody, I would bet on Jade Raymond.
Sure.
she's made huge games with huge teams. You know she can turn out product.
And even when she hasn't put anything out so long, and all this stuff she does has been internally, canceled, she instantly can turn around and get a new big, high level gig or get funding.
Yeah.
For her own studio, and like that means she's showing people what the because you can show your previous canceled work internally to get a new job. I mean, you can't show it to the world, but you can show it in confidence to new employers as like, here's what I was working on, like, and that stuff happens fast for her. So clearly, like, what she has to show, what she's been working on her ideas, get people excited, get people with the money excited. And like that's not a universal thing. Like there's people who have struggled for years to get another funding round.
I would give her money
for sure.
Yep. So,
and I will as soon as that game comes out. Like,
so this is a risk on PlayStation's part, but I think it's a pretty safe and calculated risk.
I think this goes in the same slot as Blue Point being a really smart move.
Yeah, and I think she will be able to get talent. I think, like as you said,
I mean, people are already saying she's mostly reassembled the original Assassin's Creed team.
Like, I think people are going to want to go work at Haven.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's a big X factor.
You're with someone that you've had a good working experience with before, and you're under Sony, so you know that it's going to get done.
Yeah, and you're going to have the resources to get your project done the way you want to. PlayStation also doesn't rush stuff out before it's done.
No, Sony wants that boutique experience.
There's so many good things about it. So it is risky. There's no doubt PlayStation took a risk on this, but I think it's a very calculated and smart risk that I do think will pay off. Will it pay off with the first game? Maybe not.
I don't know. But also look at how long Sony supported Dreams.
Right. Yeah.
Like
it's still supporting it, technically. Yeah. So
it's still going.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still there. So...
And worth looking at if you get the chance. Like, it's, there's amazing stuff being made in that right now. I only don't check in as often as I should on Dreams, but it is absolutely worth loading up and just seeing what you see. Yeah,
what the people have made. Do you think PlayStation should continue with this strategy going forward, or do you think this was just the ideal situation?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what else they're looking at or what else they're after. I think, like we saw with who did they buy?
Housemarque? It's one of the recent
No,
ones.
they didn't buy Housemarque, did they?
PlayStation did, yeah.
Did they?
Mm-hmm.
Who bought Bungie? Was that Microsoft?
Yeah.
Xbox. Like, I think Sony should be doing the same thing. We're looking at things that plug holes or give expertise they need in their realm. In large part, I would say that would be first person shooting. They don't have a shooter to compete with anything. I mean, maybe you don't need to anymore. I mean, maybe we need to get out of the older thinking of, like, if you don't have a first person shooter, you're not a complete library, because maybe that doesn't matter so much anymore. Outside of, like, Call of Duty.
Yeah.
But
even that seems to be waning a little bit here. So Sony did buy Bungie, actually. It wasn't
Sony. Okay. So yeah, I think I see them plugging holes where they don't have, they don't have that expertise. And this seems like whatever this idea is she has is something that they really want in their stable.
Well, they have, 4 years to get out 10 games as a service?
Yeah.
You better get cracking.
And I do wonder if this is one of them.
It is, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. It's definitely one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so is the new Twisted Metal game, and so is Bungie's Matter, and whatever else Bungie is cooking up. That gets you to 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So I got 5 more to go. There's one for The Last of Us, I think, that's being worked on.
Right, they're doing some kind of multiplayer focus. Yeah, the whatever they call the.
Yeah,
I can never remember what they call the multiplayer.
They actually get to the 10 in 4 years,
probably.
Oddly enough. Which it seemed at first when they announced it like that would be impossible, but it might happen.
Yeah, when you think about how wide that net is.
Yeah. And as you said, buying Bungie plugged a bunch of holes for PlayStation. Not only does it give them a studio that can make good shooters, it also has experts in games as a service, blah, blah, blah. So Sony's, I think, made some smart decisions recently, given its limited resources in comparison to the company is trying to compete with, which essentially has endless resources to compete with. So it does seem like, and it's getting a little riskier. It's taking more risks now, but it has to. It's the only way it's going to be able to compete with Microsoft 3 years from now.
Yeah, because you might really be running into a problem in a year or 2 years where, Microsoft's first party lineup looks as gem ridden as
I think
Sony's.
it's a given. It's going to be,
and that has not been a problem for 10 years.
Yeah. Or maybe ever, honestly. I mean,
there was a period
depending on how much you like Gears and Halo.
In the 360 era, I think you had enough variety to kind of make it competitive. But I think around 2013, it just lost all of that. It was Halo. It was mediocre Halo games, Gears of War games that everybody was kind of done with, and Forza.
Yeah,
and that was it.
Games. Yeah,
over and over and over and over.
Year after year. Yep. All right, there you go. That's GameFace 293. We've got some time to do some Q&A, so if you have some questions, put them in the chat. Go at Sifted Games when you ask a question. That way it's easy for us to pluck them out of the chat. Here's the first one from AJ the Legend Watson. Let me bring this up so you guys can all see it. Do you believe Nintendo's decision to push Advance Wars back is truly due to world events or something to do with development of the game? I actually did not even hear that. I don't know if that broke today while we've been here. Although I'm glad that there's some news happening that Advance Wars was pushed back.
That was like a week and something ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was around when we were really sick.
Oh, okay. I was checked out for a few days.
They pushed it way back. And it was,
way back?
Yeah, like October or something.
Oh, wow. I totally missed that.
Yeah, it got pushed way back because they didn't want to release a war game, especially because there's a Russian analog. There's a very there's a very belligerent Russian faction in that.
Right.
I think that was entirely because of Ukraine. I don't think it was a development delay.
Yeah, I had missed that.
That game was supposed to come out in December. Yeah, I think that was entirely because of the events of the time.
Yeah, I had missed that story, but now that I'm hearing it, it's absolutely because of the war. No doubt about it.
Yeah, which is what they said. Yeah. I mean, they said it's because they were out of sensitivity for what was happening in world events, kind of thing.
That makes sense. Lynn Jeff 99. What's up, Jeff? Hope you're doing good, man. Would you consider joining with the Easy Allies crew now that Brandon is leaving? What would be the pros and cons of that situation? No. I mean, Brandon would have no bearing on that at all. In fact, I would rather join up with Easy Allies if Brandon was there. No disrespect to any of the guys that aren't Brandon, but I love Brandon to death. He's an awesome guy, and I would love to work with him again. So Brandon being there would be more incentive for me to join up with Easy Allies than him leaving. Pros and cons of joining up or not joining. I mean, the pros are obviously joining forces, having the work power. Like, I do everything by myself, so having anyone to do anything would be a huge advantage to me. I don't know if they would consider any advantage to joining up, but obviously having other people to do stuff would change my life. The other pros, I think, one of the pros for them was that they would have an official website instead of just kind of the thing that they have now. They may not even be interested in that. They maybe, when they launched, just didn't want to invest the money in building a real website, and so they just kind of have this very simple thing that they've been using. But they would obviously have Sifted if we were to join forces, and Sifted has built-in paywalls, which I've spent a lot of money to build. We ended up ditching those for Patreon because you guys requested that we go to Patreon, but that stuff is still there. So as we mentioned earlier in the show, it seems like the day of Patreon is, the sun is setting on that day. So if they were to say, you know what, let's get out of Patreon and go back to where we're not losing as big of a cut of the money, then Sifted would work great for that. But otherwise, yeah, I don't see anything like that happening. And Brandon being there would be incentive for me to join up. Him leaving would not increase the incentive to join up. El Guapo 3385. Sorry if you already answered this, but just want to hear your thoughts or response to what Pactor says about PlayStation's future, how it would cease to exist. LOL. I haven't seen that, actually. Did you?
I don't know. I'm sure it's in the same vein as he's been saying for like the last 2 generations, that this is the last generation of
it probably
hardware.
Is the same thing about him saying that.
Which remains nonsense.
Yeah.
So maybe one day, but not anytime soon.
I mean, I think he'll be right eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually there are going to
I don't know if
we'll
be around to see it.
Yeah, I'll probably be dead, though, I think, whenever there's no consoles anymore. I think we've talked about that before, though. I don't know why it's bubbling up again. He's been saying that for like 6 years. Mm-hmm. It's not like a new thing. Derek D111. I got the idea for this question from one of the former GMG episodes. Okay. Shane mentioned the possibility that Treyarch might be making a free-to-play game that wasn't an FPS. I doubt that will happen. But what dev that is known for shooters would you like to get out of his comfort zone, like Guerrilla working on Horizon? I do not remember saying that Treyarch might be working on a free-to-play game that wasn't an FPS. They are working, I think, on a free-to-play game that's not Call of Duty, but that doesn't mean it's not an FPS. Mm-hmm. That's what I was talking about. But still, it's an interesting question. So what other developer would you like to see change that has worked on kind of one genre the whole time and you want to see him work on something else? Maybe Bungie.
Bungie, yeah. I mean,
because Bungie in its infancy, in its younger days, it did work on other stuff besides
did have a couple
first-person
other
shooters.
things. It did Abuse, which was a side-scrolling kind of Metroid-y thing.
Well, Halo was supposed to be entirely different than what
Halo
it
was
ended up
supposed to be
becoming.
basically an open-world, third-person like squad game.
Yep. So that's a good one, I think.
Or Myth. Myth was an RTS.
Yep.
I really liked Myth.
Yep.
There's a game that's weird that they've never remastered. I mean, I don't know who owns that now. I know Bungie sold off Oni and Myth rights years and years ago.
Yeah. I think it's hard to find studios anymore that only make one type of game.
Yeah.
Even From Software. Like, it's made tons of games throughout its history.
Yeah, just found Miyazaki found the formula that works.
Yeah.
And it's going to do that over and over again.
It's hard to find developers that only make one genre anymore. It just is. And that's good. Like, it just means that studios are
I'd like to see Playground Games make a Fable game.
We're going to see that.
We're getting
to. Because its zombie games weren't all that great.
What did they make?
Didn't they make the last, what's the first party Xbox zombie open world game?
State of Decay?
Yeah. Didn't they make one?
That's a same team that was literally formed just to make those.
Okay, gotcha. But yeah,
they're still working. There's a game we haven't seen in a while, State of Decay 3. They showed that, like 3 years ago?
Yeah, no, I think it was at the debut of Series X. I think it's when they showed that CG trailer. Yeah. But yeah, we haven't seen that since. So that should be
Undead Labs. That's that company.
That's right. Yep.
Playground, I believe, was just made to do Forza Horizon, if I remember right.
Maybe.
Unless they did stuff before that I don't remember.
Yeah. But that's another good example of a studio that was typically doing just one thing that's now branching out to do something different. And I've been very nervous about that, by the way, about them making a Fable game, because it's so far out of the realm. It's like going from Killzone to Horizon is not as extreme as going from Forza Horizon to Fable. It's just not. So those are good examples. Vincent says Advance Wars does not even have a date at this point. Ashes in the Hourglass. With the juggernaut success of Elden Ring, can you think of any other case where a niche series exploded in such a way? From a game that Sony didn't want to publish and was ashamed of. Well, I don't know what the hell.
I don't think they were ashamed of anything. They just didn't think it would be successful in the US.
You romanticize From's games so bad, dude. Like,
yeah, From was not, Sony was not ashamed of it. They didn't
think
it had.
That deserves a face palm.
They didn't think that had a market in the West.
Gosh.
And honestly, they were pretty much right. It took them 6 games and 10 years to get here. This was a slow burn.
And the other thing too,
I would definitely not call this an explosion.
No.
It was earned.
The other part too is that like their games have been selling like 8 to 10 million already. Like this isn't that gigantic of a bump. Like we'll wait and see.
The games have like been selling. Like the top Dark Souls games were selling like 8 to 10 million after like 6 years.
Right. Yeah. Like, lifetime sales.
Yeah. Elden Ring is at 12 million already.
But here's what I'm saying.
It's a big change. But
I don't think the lifetime sales of Elden Ring, personal opinion, I don't think it's going to have a long tail. I feel like a lot of people bought the game and they're either like, wow, this is awesome and what I thought it was going to be, or hot damn, I can't believe I wasted $60 on this game.
I think it's going to probably get to 15.
Maybe.
I think get to 15, which is a huge jump from the previous ones. Yeah. However, as you say,
what about the next game?
Yeah, exactly, because there's no guarantee that all the people who bought that because of the hype liked it and will come back for another one.
Although I was surprised that, according to figures, at least what they're reporting, 70% of people who played Elden Ring beat the first boss. I really have a hard time believing that.
I mean, according to the Steam,
that's what they're saying.
According to the Steam achievements.
Oh, Steam. Is that where that's coming from?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, that makes more sense. PC players, to me, more likely, I feel like, to do that.
Possibly.
Console players, I would be really surprised.
Well, and also, you don't have much else to go on, but I will say that having gotten a lot of achievements on the Xbox version, all the main, story bosses don't have the rare achievement thing. I mean, that's 10% or higher. But all the optional hard stuff, you're getting 5 to 8%. So you get the little gem achievement, rare achievement thing. Yeah. But all the main stuff, it's in. My guess is at least in the 20% range. Yeah. Which is pretty high for some of these games. I mean, you're talking about you look at some of the percentages of these things and there's games where it's you have 95% for the achievement to get to the first save point. You're like, what are people doing? Just started it up to see if it works and went away and never open it again.
Some people do that.
Yeah, I imagine it, I guess.
I think it may struggle to get to 15 million if it's at 12 now.
I think it'll get there.
I think every fan before, fans of the franchise would wait a little bit to buy it, maybe. I think every From Software fan bought this game out of the gate.
Well, I think every From Software game fan does that anyway.
Really?
Because everyone's so terrified of spoilers.
You think?
Absolutely. I think 90 to 95% of From Software diehard fans buy it day one.
So I'm wondering, like, when you
because they don't want to see anything before.
So I'm wondering if the other games, if they ended up selling 8 or 10, if they sold like 7 in the first month or two, and then they only ended up getting an extra million.
The hardcore Souls fan base is between 4 and 5 million.
Wow.
And then a lot of the rest comes from curiosity about all the chatter that it gets. Comes from the really deep sale. I mean, there's periods where you can get those Dark Souls games for $4 or $9.
That's true.
You know, like that's still units sold.
Yeah, it
but
is.
Like, you know, that's why I have it on every platform, because at some point I could get Dark Souls 2 Scholar the first thing for $5.99, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll have that there. Yeah. Like, why not? So I think there's a lot of double and triple dipping, especially across generations by fans. But like in this case, the fact that Elden Ring sold 12 million out of the gate, I think you're looking at 6 million new players on that.
Probably.
And like
the next game will be the X Factor.
I mean, look, putting George R.R. Martin's name on that thing was the smartest thing they possibly could, because it got chatter in
mainstream
channels that it never would have otherwise.
True. Yeah. Their next game is going to be the X Factor.
Yeah,
because you'll see all these people that bought Elden Ring, if they're like, yeah, I'm ready to do that again, or not.
Yeah. I mean, I think you will get a bump in comparison to, like, say, Dark Souls 3.
Yeah. Some people will stick around, for sure.
Are you going to sell another 15 million on that thing? Probably not. I think a lot of people did not, vibe with this thing.
We'll see. It'll be interesting to watch.
I mean, there was a Twitter account I saw that was just collecting photos of, like, $54.99 used copies of Elden Ring, like, the first few days after, because people would just take it right back.
I just looked on eBay out of curiosity, and it's just flooded with them.
Yeah.
Just thousands and thousands and thousands of Elden Ring. And now the price on eBay is like rock bottom because nobody wants it.
And it's notable that so many physical copies were sold, because I think physical copies are being sold more commonly to the people that haven't played one before.
That's true.
Because they see it on the shelf and they're like, oh, that's that thing that they were talking about. So they pick it up. I mean, look, the fact that people were willing to pick it up at all is a good sign. You're going to pick up some people, you're maybe going to get 20% of those people back.
Yeah.
It is still going to raise the sales profile for From's games in the end. It's going to be interesting to see how much. It's going to be interesting to see how many of those people you retain.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that are not interested or bounced off this game that you're never going to hear from because they don't talk about video games on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, they just bought it. I mean, I saw a little bit
judging any kind of anything by Twitter. Twitter is 10% of the population, and 1% of those people are the ones who tweet, and 0.1% of those people are the ones who do like 80% of the tweeting.
Yeah.
So you're not getting a really useful demographic slice looking at social media. So it'll be interesting to see what total sales look like on their next game, but we're going to have to wait a few years for that.
Yep.
The big question is their next game going to be something new, or is it going to be Elden Ring 2? And will Sony buy them?
Yep. Commander Fett, what is your fondest memory of working at Game Trailers with Brandon Jones? From Software, obviously, the hottest studio on the market right now. My guess is they're accepting offers from everybody.
Well, they're owned by a company that I don't think is interested in selling. You'd have to buy the parent company to get them at this point, I think.
Okay.
Which, Microsoft might.
Fondest memory of working at Game Trailers with Brandon Jones. Man, there were so many. Because we had so many wins and victories at Game Trailers. Like, literally every other week, like, something happened that our numbers were just, like, skyrocketing, that, like, we couldn't even, like, celebrate them all. So my fondest memories were celebrating the wins with Jones. Just trying to think which win might have been. Sometimes it was just, like, working together on retrospectives with him, because I had worked on retrospectives at GameSpot. I was a features editor at GameSpot, and we had done really good retrospectives that were thousands and thousands of words long, but they were just text. They weren't video. And so when Jones was like, I want to start doing these retrospectives, basically what you were doing at GameSpot, but in video form, it was kind of like a melding of the minds, where I had worked on the editorial side and the writing side of that stuff, and obviously he had the video editing chops and the production chops that he wanted to do it. So those were some of the fondest memories as far as working with him. But like probably the first E3, where Game Trailers was at E3 and we like killed it. Like our numbers just like went through the stratosphere. And I remember I was on the show floor for the first day, and we were still small. Like, I had only hired like maybe 4 people at that point, like Ryan Stevens and a couple other ones. And I remember I had been on the floor all day, and I really had no idea what was going on with the website while I was gone. And I came in, it was like 7 or 8 o'clock. I was really tired. And I remember walking into the office, and somebody yelled, "Shane's here," when I walked in the door. And everybody came out of their office, and it was just like, just elation. Because everyone was like, holy crap, we just did it. We just got over the hump. We are now like a major player. And the high fives that I got, I'll never forget how bad my hand hurt. Because people were high-fiving me so hard. And then I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, come and look at these numbers. I remember Brent grabbing me by the arm and like dragging me into his office to show me like the numbers that we had done that day. And like, that's probably the best memory I have, because I just remember his smiling face. He was like the first face that I locked eyes with when I walked into the office. And I heard, "Shane's here." And he came out and looked, and we just made eye contact. And I could just see on his face that something big had happened. And I was oblivious because I was on the floor just working all day. And he was kind of back at the base, like managing everything. So that's probably the best memory I have. But I have so many. Like, he's a great guy. Like, the person that you saw on camera, that's him. It wasn't an act. Like, he's just a good dude. And like, he used to have parties at his house, and he'd invite everybody over. And like, his wife is just as awesome as he is. And you can just see it. Like, I don't know. It's a shame that he left. It's a shame what this does to people. It just grinds you to a pulp. Like, sometimes I wake up and I'm shocked that I'm willing to get up and dust myself off and do it again. It's like, I know everyone's like jealous of these jobs or whatever, but it is a grind, man. It's like there's always something you can be doing, and then it's never good enough. And then you go on like on my website and people are like complaining about me. I'm like, what? Do you have any idea what I've done? What I've sacrificed for this? Do you know what Brandon sacrificed? He sacrificed his child's like younger years. It's like, to criticize people like Brandon and I for not doing something wrong or not doing something right, that's just effing wrong. It just is. Like, think about it. Like, what we were doing to bring this to you. Like, the sacrifices that we've made, that Brandon has made. So, it sucks that he's gone, but I get it. Sometimes you feel like you're giving up your life and no one gives a shit. Seriously. And all they do is complain still. It's like, really? And I feel like...
It's also why George Lucas sold Star Wars.
Yeah. It's never good enough.
And look how that turned out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I know how Brandon's feeling. And I know there's probably parts of it that were tied into his child being ill, and it was a wake-up call. Like, that wake-up call for me should have been when my dad and my sister were killed in a car accident. Like, I should have woken up. Like, instead, what did I do? I took 3 days off, and I'm back doing this again. And still, you guys complain. That's why Brandon's gone. You guys need to change your attitudes towards people like us. We're also not like 19 years old anymore. It's hard to do this. It's hard to dedicate 14 or 15 hours a day to a job when you're our age. But here we are grinding for you guys. Like, give it a break, man. Give it a freaking break, or you're going to keep losing people like Brandon. And that's all I'll say on that. Undie Unchained. Are you excited for Kirby and the Forgotten Land? Yes, we talked about it in the last GameFace, the one we did 2 weeks ago. I really liked it. Yeah, I think it's an auspicious demo that's up on the eShop right now, and I hope the full game continues what's in there, because I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'll play it.
Yep. One more question. Vincent said the PlayStation trophy percentages are similar for Elden Ring. Okay. 61% of PlayStation owners have beaten Godric. That's impressive.
Pretty good.
I'm surprised. Andy T. Monahan, here's the last one. Another Elden Ring question. Does the next game have an easy mode despite the sales numbers?
Judging by Miyazaki's comments, no.
No. I mean, the sales numbers mean that they won't put it in. The logic...
I don't think he'd put it in anyway.
Right, I don't either. But now that it's sold like that, like, hell no, there's no way he's going to change anything. They're not going to change anything. How they did PR for that, They're going to do it exactly the same way.
They're going to go get Brandon Sanderson to be the author for the world.
Literally everything that they did for Elden Ring, Bandai Namco, and From Software, they're going to do it exactly that way again until it stops working.
Oh, you're never going to see another From game without an open world.
Never.
That's it. That's what these games are from now
You'll
on.
never get a more linear kind of curated experience out of one of their games again. It's not going to happen. Because why would you? You'd be an idiot to do anything but what you're doing. So yeah, everything that they did, all the marketing, and one thing that does make me happy is that they did reach out to us and got us into the beta. We had review code very early, which isn't easy for us because we're a smaller site. So sometimes getting review code is a struggle. Sometimes getting review code from Bandai Namco is tough. Like, they won't send us like Dragon Ball Fighters, but they sent us Elden Ring, and it worked. So I wish other publishers realized that distributing review code like that is a good thing. But anyway, I think Bandai Namco and From Software will do everything exactly the same next time. Except it'll be Elden Ring 2, and they'll add some features and hopefully make it crazier than the first one. So, yeah, if you're worried that they're going to make changes, don't be. When you have success like this, you do the same thing until it stops working.
Like, hopefully what the next one they make will look like that Demon's Souls remake. Because it'll just be for the new console.
That is a big complaint from me personally about the game, is I love the art in the game, but technically it's a drop behind. Also, the next game will be a PS5 exclusive. They're not going to be making it for both generations, so that
I gotta say, I looked at some retrospective stuff about Dark Souls stuff, some like Dark Souls lore stuff, and a lot of it, a lot of it's old, like 10 years old, using footage from the original Dark Souls game. Oh my god, it's eye-searingly bad. Like, I'm so used to the remastered version that I'm just like, oh my god, it looked like that.
Yeah, it's easy to forget.
It's It looks awful.
Yeah.
Like, you forget how Demon's Souls looked to the eye even at the time.
I remember because I saw it at Tokyo Game Show, and Ryan.
You can't tell what it's supposed to be.
Ryan Stevens pulled me over there. He's like, "Should we cover this?" And I looked at it and I said, "No." Mm-hmm. And we got to like the last day and we had tackled everything. And he's like, "All right, I'm gonna go tackle that Demon's Souls thing now." I'm like, "All right, go ahead." And he saw it. For whatever reason, Ryan Stevens saw what was in that franchise way before anyone else. I remember coming back from TGS and he kept talking about that game, and I'm like, dude, that game is a piece of crap. It feels like it's held together with like Elmer's glue. And he's like, you're right. He's like, but there's something about it. He's like, I can't wait to play it, and blah, blah, blah. So he definitely had his eye on the future with that one. So with that, we're going to have to close episode 293. We will be back here again next week, next Tuesday. Again, apologies for missing last week. I was sick as a dog. If Shane doesn't do GameFace, he is feeling low, and I was feeling awful. So it's great to feel better. It's great to be back. We'll be back again next week, next Tuesday, right here at twitch.tv/siftedgames at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. If you're listening to this show on any of the podcast feeds, and GameFace is on all of them, at the very least, leave us a review. And if you'd really like to help us, head to patreon.com/sifted and drop us a pledge. Again, our Patreon is still at rock bottom, the lowest it's ever been. I don't know if some people, maybe you'll reconsider us now that things are changing over at Easy Allies. I don't know. But we do the best that we can for you guys. And I think we keep our current patrons pretty happy with the amount of content that we create. So, Matt, good to be back with you here on GameFace. We'll see you guys next Tuesday. GameFace is up and out.